Hey family, welcome back to my video. Today we will see, what if Naruto had dealt for death eyes to Shinigami? Before we start, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the original author of this story. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. Now enjoy the video. Naruto was running through the streets. He was weaving through the crowds of living citizens of Konoha with expert grace. His pursuers were less skilled at passing through busy streets and he was gaining on them. But his bright orange jumpsuit shone like a beacon amongst the moderately dressed people and they managed to keep him within their sights. Naruto didn't mind. He loved the thrill of the chase. That was why he splashed the two Chunin with neon orange paint. He threw a glance over his shoulder. They had left the busiest avenue and the two enraged shinobi were gaining on him again. He smirked. Everything was going according to his plan. He kept his pace and headed to a certain lane. The two were almost upon him. He turned to a side street and sped up. The pair followed him. Naruto pulled on a ninja wire nearly invisible to anyone who didn't know it was there. The two Chunin entered the alley exactly as the trap sprung. A tripwire made them stumble while the stack of empty crates piled up near a wall toppled over. Naruto laughed as his pursuers were buried underneath them. He listened to their angry shouts for a while before heading off. He wanted to be far away when they finally dug themselves out. He noticed Iruka-sensei lurking behind a fence. Naruto saw him through his concealing genjutsu. It covered his body perfectly, but it couldn't hide his soul. He pretended not to notice him until the teacher grabbed his collar. Then he pretended surprise. Iruka-sensei. What are you doing here? Why aren't you in class, Naruto? The academy instructor chastised him. The graduation exam is in less than a week. Do you want to fail again? Of course not, he boasted. I'm an amazing ninja. I'll graduate with no effort at all. Naruto, Iruka spoke in a patient tone. You can't even do a single bunshin. How do you want to graduate? Hey, just you watch, the boy grinned. I'll graduate this year for sure, believe it. I'd believe it if you put as much effort to your studies as you do to your pranks, the teacher chastised him. But that stuff is boring, he pouted. Iruka just sighed exasperatedly and dragged his unruly charge to the classroom. Naruto wasn't boasting. He really could graduate if he wanted. Even though the simple bunshin was still giving him trouble, he could do the Mizu bunshin almost with no effort, as long as there was a water source nearby. The problem was he couldn't explain where he learned it. If most people in Konoha treated him like plague now, he didn't know what they would do if he confessed he could talk to dead people. That was his ability. He could see people's souls, both alive and dead. He figured he gained it when the Kyuubi no Kitsune was sealed into him, whether thanks to the demon itself or the touch of the death god, he wasn't sure. It wasn't like he could ask. He wasn't supposed to know about the sealing, but there were too many souls lurking around speaking about it. It wasn't easy to find a spirit that would talk to him. The ghosts wandering around were the souls that couldn't find rest, thanks to something from their lives waiting on their conscience, chaining them to the earth. They tended to pace aimlessly, muttering about whatever was bothering them. Only a few retained their minds and were able to hold a conversation with him. Some of them called him names, seeing him as the demon, but he didn't hold it against them. He could see the sheer terror they went through reflected in their aura. If attacking him verbally helped them find their rest, they were welcome to do so. He just hated when they touched him. It was so cold and it sent icy shivers through his body, like the sun stopped shining for a moment. That was also the reason he wore orange and pranked people so much. He had to assure himself he was still alive and not one of the colorless cold apparitions idling around. When he met a ghost of shinobi willing to talk to him, he considered it a huge success. Some of them talked about the missions they undertook and sometimes died on, but some even showed him some of their tricks. Naruto tried his best to remember and recreate them. It made the bulk of his ninja knowledge. He had a lot of holes in his basic education, but he knew some of the advanced stuff. Naruto was sitting at his desk in the academy classroom, utterly bored as Iruka-sensei droned about the history of Konoha. Naruto. Iruka's voice hit him just as he was about to drift off. Can you tell me what was the special ability of the Shodai Hokage? Naruto had met the Shodai's ghost 2 years ago near the Hokage Tower. The founder of Konoha was really interesting to spend time with, and Naruto could boast knowing more about him than almost anyone else in the Leaf Village, but he couldn't tell. Wasn't it something with trees? He scratched his head nervously. That's not enough, Naruto, Iruka said exasperatedly. Ah, come on. Why do we even need to know such details? That's important knowledge, you baka, Sakura shouted, hitting him on the head. What was that for, Sakura-chan? He rubbed his head and made puppy eyes on her. Naruto liked Sakura. For ordinary people it was impossible to understand why. She obviously disliked him and kept hitting him on the head for the smallest offense. Random observers couldn't understand how he can be so thick not to notice she hated him and was hopelessly in love with Uchiha Sasuke. The truth was Naruto realized it very well. She just made him feel alive with her punches. Every time he felt like he was drifting into the realm of ghosts, he would annoy her and her fist would ground him back into the world of living. He decided he would graduate this year just for her. He hoped he would get her on his team. For being a baka, stop it, you two, Iruka yelled. We're in the middle of the class. The lesson resumed. The day of the graduation finally came. Naruto was anxious. Not that he might fail, but that he might pass. If anybody found out about that, they would be befuddled. Naruto always shouted he wanted to be the Hokage, and usually meant it, so why wouldn't he want to graduate? It would be easier to understand if they knew how many dead shinobi he spoke with. It quickly stripped him of all delusions of glory in the shinobi life. He had almost as good understanding of the perils and misery of ninja career as seasoned war veterans. Although he considered himself fairly good ninja for his age, and he was right, he knew there were many better who wouldn't care. He was just a kid and would kill him with pleasure. He wanted to get good before going out there. That was why he spectacularly botched his options at earlier graduation, but he couldn't afford to delay graduation any further. His yearmates would be graduating today and he needed to be among them if he didn't want to look like an even bigger loser than he already did. The morning of the tests came and Naruto did his best. The written test gave him trouble. Reading wasn't his strongest skill. Thrown weapons test was better, but he got the worst set of kunai and shuriken the instructors could procure. It was difficult to hit anything with that, but he managed a passing grade. Taijutsu practice wasn't much better. He knew the theory, but he didn't have anyone to spar with outside the lessons. Then came the ninjutsu test. And of course it had to be bunshin. Naruto watched as the instructors called one pupil after another to a separate room. After a while they returned with a brand new Hite 8. Uchiha Sasuke, Iruka called. The brooding boy got up and sauntered to the door accompanied by multiple oohs and ahs of his fangirls. Naruto pitied him. The ghosts of his murdered family followed him everywhere. He used to try to help him, but the last Uchiha was crystal clear on the fact that he would rather die than accept help from the class dobi. Sasuke passed the test and returned with a massive applause from his fan club. Now it was Naruto's turn. He covertly uncorked the water bottle hidden in his utility pouch before walking to the examination room. Well, Naruto, Iruka said, all you need to do is create 2 perfect bunshin. Just you watch, Naruto grinned. Bunshin no jutsu. A large cloud of smoke appeared. Naruto used it to hide his movements and silently created 2 water clones from the supply he brought along. It was a tricky business, because the amount of water was limited, but he had practiced it and proved that with enough control it is doable. He just had to spread the water along the surface of the clones and make them hollow. Unfortunately, chakra control was one area he struggled with. The cloud cleared and Naruto anxiously glanced at his handiwork. To his left stood a perfect copy of himself, grinning. To his right, the clone ran out of water. Its head was missing. No, thought Naruto, frantically willing the clone to form fully. I'm sorry, Naruto, Iruka said, you failed to make 2 perfect bunshin. I cannot let you pass. No, Naruto shouted. His clones dissolved into puddles. What is it? Iruka asked, startled. His assistant Mizuki looked interested. Mizu bunshin, Naruto admitted. There was no reason to lie. The 2 chunin should be able to recognize the jutsu of their own. How do you know it? Iruka demanded. I saw somebody doing it, he answered. It wasn't entirely a lie. And you learned it just like that? Iruka was dubious. Yes, Naruto nodded. I think we should let him pass, Mizuki proposed. He made 1 perfect clone. He was supposed to make 2, Iruka objected. I ran out of water, Naruto explained. If I had more, I could make an army of Mizu bunshin. There won't be always a supply of water at hand, Naruto, Iruka said. I'm sorry but I can't let you pass, that is unless you can make 2 perfect bunshin, and this time the regular kind, no fancy water jutsu. Okay. Naruto said subdued. He still had chance. He concentrated and tried to create the basic bunshin. Control, he thought. Use just the precise amount of chakra and you'll make it. The cloud of chakra dispersed, revealing 2 sickly pale and deformed apparitions keeled over on the ground. Naruto grimaced. He had made better attempts before. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I cannot let you pass, Iruka said grimly. Isn't it harsh? Mizuki asked. Naruto didn't understand why was the silver-haired instructor trying to help him. He had never cared for him before. Probably doesn't want to deal with me anymore, he decided. No, and this is final. If he can't make perfect bunshin anytime, that he'd just be a hindrance to his teammates and can get them all killed. Naruto was sitting on the swing in the academy yard. He watched the happy graduates and their proud parents celebrating today's success. Fools, he thought. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into. He reckoned most of them would be dead soon, especially Sasuke's fan club. Lot of dead fresh genin gathered around to haunt their teachers for failing to prepare them properly. The academy graduation test was wrong and narrow-minded in his opinion, when it failed him and let airheads like them pass. They should do something else, like give them a simulated mission and grade how effectively they could complete it. He could then show off a lot of skills the current test didn't even touch upon. Hello, Naruto. Hello, Mizuki-sensei. The boy slowly turned to the newcomer. Iruka doesn't mean to be harsh, the teacher said, you must understand. Naruto understood. He could see Iruka's love to his students and his pain over the loss of his parents. Talking to ghosts made him surprisingly well informed. He just couldn't speak of any of this. He wants you to be prepared the best before you go out to the fields. It's dangerous out there. No kidding, Naruto thought but said nothing. But I see you are a talented boy who really deserved to graduate this year. This is why I'll tell you what Iruka hid from you. There is another way to graduate. Naruto perked up. Not that he wanted to become genin so badly, but because something stunk about this situation. Mizuki never liked him, so why was he suddenly being so nice? Naruto could see the dark tones in his soul. The silver-haired instructor wasn't a good person, he was almost certain. But he said nothing and listened. It was already night when Naruto was stealthily making his way towards the Hokage Tower. It was supposed to be the best guarded building in whole Konoha, but when somebody had talked with the spirit of the architect, it was possible to find a safe way in. It wasn't easy by any means, but Naruto was a crafty young ninja and knew a few tricks to fool intruder detecting seals, thanks to another ghost who shared his knowledge with him. The window of Hokage's office wasn't closed. Naruto sneaked through the gap. He dropped to the floor and released the transformation, making him appear like an animal. This was another of his secrets. He could really change his shape, not just appearance, but when he transformed into something of different size, it was very draining on his chakra. He took a look around. Where was what he came looking for? A side door opened and the Sandame appeared there. What are you doing here, Naruto? Naruto was sitting on the grass near the shack. Mizuki told him to wait. He was studying the Forbidden Scroll. The first jutsu was a godsend. The Kage Bunshin was exactly what he needed. He carefully studied the description and then started practicing. A few hours later he leaned against the wall with a satisfied smile. He had made it. He was tired, but he was happy. Nothing stood in the way of his graduation now. He waited for Mizuki to appear. Iruka came instead. What are you doing, Naruto? The Chunin instructor asked desperately. Oh no, thought the boy, this wasn't supposed to happen. What now? Iruka-sensei, he flashed him his patented wide grin. When in doubt, play dumb. That strategy usually paid off. Look, I already learned the jutsu. Can I graduate now? Naruto, who told you that? Iruka demanded. Mizuki-sensei did. He told me if I learn one jutsu from this scroll, I'll graduate. That was when Mizuki finally showed up. Naruto saw him in time, but Iruka first noticed him only when the kunai flew out of the tree. Naruto jumped out of the way. Iruka had no idea his student possessed such good reflexes and tried to protect him. He ended up hit instead, but his flak vest took most of the damage. Iruka-sensei, Naruto shouted in alarm. He didn't want anything to happen to the teacher because of him. Mizuki jumped out of the tree. Give me the scroll, Naruto. Mizuki-sensei. The boy put on his best confused expression. What's going on? Naruto, don't. Iruka shouted. Whatever happens, don't give him the scroll. It contains dangerous forbidden jutsu. He mustn't get his hands on it. Naruto, there's no point in you having it, Mizuki smiled, so be a good boy and give it to me. No, I haven't finished studying it yet. I can become an even more awesome ninja with this and then everybody would love me. Naruto, Mizuki smiled darkly, they aren't going to love you no matter what you do. Do you want to know why? I'll tell you. Don't. Iruka shouted, but Mizuki ignored him. 12 years ago, the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked this village. They told you that the fourth Hokage killed it, but that is not true. No? Naruto looked befuddled. That day a special rule was created. A rule everybody but you knew. That wasn't true. Naruto knew it as well. One man executed for violating it told him. The rule was never meant to be told to you. What's the rule? Tell me already, Naruto demanded. No, Iruka yelled. Mizuki chuckled evilly. The rule is that nobody was allowed to tell you that the Kyuubi wasn't in fact destroyed. You are the Kyuubi. And you are an idiot. What? Whatever response the traitorous Chunin was expecting, that wasn't it. He didn't get the chance to ponder about it long. Two Anbu appeared out of nowhere, restraining him. Mizuki was startled, but regained his composure quickly. He gathered his strength and managed to free one of his arms. A kunai appeared in his hand and he hurled it at Naruto with all his might before one of the Anbu hit him on the head, knocking him out. Naruto saw the weapon sailing towards him, but he had momentarily let his guard down and wasn't quick enough to get out of its way. Stupid, he thought. Like he never heard all the tales of what got various shinobi killed. Iruka saw it as well, but couldn't get to his student in time. The kunai hit Naruto below the ribs. Iruka watched in horror as the boy toppled backwards. No! He shouted. Then Naruto exploded in a puff of smoke. What? Iruka blinked in surprise. That was a shadow clone. Iruka-sensei, Naruto's voice explained from behind. Iruka turned to see the blonde coming out of the shack. Iruka was confused. This was a trap, he asked. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Good job, Uzumaki, said one of the Anbu. His partner had disappeared, carrying the unconscious Mizuki on his back. Now let's return the scroll. Of course. Naruto picked up the scroll and headed to the Hokage Tower. Iruka tagged along. So let me get this straight, Naruto, Iruka said over a bowl of ramen. Mizuki told you he'd let you graduate if you take the forbidden scroll, but you didn't believe him. Naruto nodded between slurps. He was finishing his second bowl, so you sneaked in to the Hokage Tower to tell the Sandame about it. Naruto again nodded. He then decided that you'd lay a trap for Mizuki and allowed you to take out the scroll and learn one jutsu. Yes. Naruto finished his bowl and Ayame hadn't brought him another yet. You then waited for Mizuki on the spot he told you to wait and studied the scroll, while two Anbu watched you didn't try anything the Hokage didn't allow. Naruto nodded, once again slurping the noodles happily. You mastered an A-rank kinjutsu within a couple of hours and then replaced yourself with a clone while the real you hid. Another nod. That is when I came. Oh, and the Hokage promised you he'd make you genin if you can complete the mission successfully. Did I miss anything? Nothing important. You did well, Naruto, Iruka complimented him. I only don't understand why you never do that well in class. Are you sure you want to know the answer? Naruto's tone was somber. It went completely against the image Iruka had of him. He suddenly felt like he was looking at a stranger. Can I have another bowl? The boy asked in his usual boisterous tone and the odd moment was gone. Iruka shook his head. He must have been imagining things. He didn't ask the question again. An. Liked it? Hated it? Let me know. Chapter 2. An. So I finally got out the second chapter. I have no idea when the next would be out. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto. If I did, I'd completely rewrite it. Through the eyes of death, Naruto went to the Hokage Tower to get his shinobi registration. Sarutobi was sitting at the desk, a Chunin at his side helping with the paperwork. He showed him his fun registration form and then listened to the lecture about proper shinobi behavior. It was almost worse than listening to the ghost of shinobi droning on how the Hokage sent him on a suicidal mission, apparently sometime during the Second Great Shinobi War. When he was told he had to retake his photo, he showed him the serious one. The elderly man looked at him with an unreadable expression and asked why he couldn't just show it outright. Before he could answer, he noticed another ghost charging at the Hokage, this one of a young child. He briefly wondered what could somebody so young have against the village leader. Then he noticed Sarutobi's eyes straying towards the newcomer. Can he see him too, he wondered. Then he realized the child was still alive. Curse it, I'm losing it again, he realized. Time to visit Sakura-chan. The attacking boy tripped on his scarf and fell on his face. He picked himself up and glared around furiously. His eyes settled at Naruto. You set a trap here, he accused. You tripped over your feet, the blonde corrected. The smaller child looked like he wanted to argue, but that moment a man ran through the door. Are you all right, he asked, and there isn't a trap anywhere. I know there is, the brat claimed. He set it up, he pointed at Naruto. The orange-clad fresh genin didn't see what his problem was, but he definitely didn't like his attitude. Don't blame your clumsiness on others, he said. I'm not clumsy. The short boy jumped at Naruto in an attempt of a threatening attack. It would have been much more impressive if he didn't trip over his scarf again. He would have landed quite painfully if the blonde didn't catch him. Let go of him. The man with glasses and bandana shouted. Geez, can't they show a bit of gratitude? I just saved the brat from hurting himself. What's his problem anyway? Oh, wait, I already know. Yeah, let go of me. The brat in question punched Naruto's arm. 'Cause I'm the Hokage's grandson. He looked at the older boy challengingly, like he expected him to do something. Spoiled brat, decided Naruto. Does he think he has it bad? He needs a wake up. So what? He shouted back daringly. So come on, go ahead and punch me, if you aren't like all the others. The young Jinchuriki had no idea what was that about, but this twerp was seriously annoying him. He decided to ignore the fact that the Hokage was watching and punched. He barely put any force behind it, but the younger boy was so surprised that he fell down and stared at Naruto stupidly. How dare you, yelled the bespectacled man. How dare you punch the honorable grandson? And you, honorable grandson, don't lose your time with the likes of him. You should focus on training instead. If you learn shinobi arts from me, an elite tutor. Naruto listened in disbelief as the man droned on. This is what the poor kid has to put up with every day. Most ghosts aren't that bad. I owe him an apology. Bah, I'm not apologizing to anyone. He noticed the kid was slowly inching towards the door. He decided it was a good idea. He already handed in his papers and he didn't have to be there anymore. He quietly made his way out. The man with bandana didn't even notice it, still engulfed in his monologue. So was the dead guy behind the Hokage. Naruto noticed he had picked up a stalker. Not another one, he groaned inwardly, but unlike Hinata, he didn't need his special sense to detect this one. The mop of dark brown hair was popping everywhere, around corners, behind trees, above a sideways held camouflage cloth. The blonde decided that enough was enough. He turned around and snatched the cloth away, revealing the completely unashamed figure of Hokage's grandson. Impressive, you could see through my cover, the brown-haired boy said. Not impressive at all, considering your utter incompetence, thought Naruto, but before he could say it, the brat continued. It seems the rumors about you are true. That depends. I'll make you my boss. What? Just what I need, being a boss to a tiny whiny brat. You heard me. You'll be my boss and in return you'll have to teach me a jutsu. Really a spoiled one, the blonde scowled. Please. Boss. The child unleashed the dreaded puppy dog eyes. Naruto never had to face them before and thus had no reason to develop a tolerance. Besides, it sounds good to be called boss, for once, he thought. Now what to teach him? He smiled. He had the perfect idea. It might even give that stuffy teacher of his an aneurysm. Naruto and Konohamaru, as his self-appointed apprentice, introduced himself, were taking a break from their training. The blonde had to admit that his new pupil wasn't a bad character, that is when he wasn't currently being a brat, which didn't happen often. He found himself enjoying his company, even if his student was completely incompetent at what he was trying to teach him. He asked him a question that was bothering him ever since the dark-haired boy made his appearance. Why do you keep attacking your grandpa like that? Konohamaru then launched into an explanation of his name and the so-called curse it meant for him. Naruto listened in silence. "You got it backwards," he said when the younger boy finished. "You have to first become a great and respected ninja, and only then you can be considered for the new Hokage. And that isn't going to happen if you insist on being a brat." "What do you know about me?" Konohamaru shouted in rage. "Seems we're back to brat again," he sighed. "If that's how you want to play. If you want to be Hokage, then beat me first," Naruto shouted with enthusiasm. "You bet I will. From now on we're rivals," Konohamaru responded in kind. "I liked him better as my underling," Naruto thought. "Can I turn it back? Probably not." "You're on," he shouted. Then he noticed somebody approaching rapidly. Oh no, he thought when he recognized him. Then Ebisu jumped onto the clearing. "Come home, young master," the self-proclaimed elite tutor commanded. "If you want to become Hokage, blah 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 blah." "No," his charge shouted. "I'll defeat the old geezer, so don't stand in my way. I'll defeat you too, sexy no jutsu." Konohamaru outdid himself. Ebisu's jaw hit the ground upon seeing the gorgeous brunette, and even one of the ghosts present looked like he would have gotten a nosebleed if he still had blood. Naruto felt pride at his new friend's accomplishment. "Well done, Konohamaru," he praised his pupil. "Now behold a true master's work. Harem no jutsu." Ebisu couldn't handle it anymore and fainted. "I see I still have much to learn before I can beat you, rival," Konohamaru said, now back in his original form, wide-eyed. "But I will beat you. I'll do it in no time, you'll see." "You'll have to work long and hard before you can get as good as me," Naruto smirked. "And I'll be working hard in the meantime too. If you want to be the Hokage, you have to go a long way and you can't take any shortcuts." "Stop lecturing me like you know everything," the younger boy pouted. "I'm not letting you to be my boss anymore." It stung. Who would want to have such a lousy underling anyway? You're not getting anywhere with that kind of attitude. I'm a real ninja now. I can't waste my time with kids who don't know what's good for them. Konohamaru looked dejected. Naruto pitied him in that moment. "I might be your rival if you truly work at surpassing me." "Deal," the younger boy shouted. Naruto smiled. It looked like the beginning of an interesting relationship. The day of team assignments finally came. Naruto had woken early in the morning and went through his regular training schedule. Then he encountered a ghost who seemed willing to talk, but he didn't manage to pry any useful information out of him. The blonde sighed, but wasn't too disappointed. Those things happened regularly to him. A quick glance at the sky revealed the sun high on its daily voyage through the heavenly ocean. He startled. He spent there more time than he had thought. Now he might miss the grand occasion. He took one look at his clothes. At one point he tried sparring with his shadow clone and ended rolling through the dirt. The sweat he had worked up in the unusually hot weather didn't help either. He wrinkled his nose. He would have to change before going to the academy. He ran home at the highest speed and took a quick shower, then put on his best orange jacket. It looked almost the same as all his other ones, but this one had less tears in it. His stomach rumbled. He had no time to prepare breakfast, but he could grab something ready. Unfortunately, his fridge was understocked, the only available option being a carton of milk. Naruto sniffed it suspiciously. It had been there for quite some time. Was it still good? The boy wasn't sure, but his growling stomach overrode his brain. He downed it in a few gulps. He wiped his mouth in his sleeve and ran towards the academy. It turned out he wasn't as late as he had originally feared. When he surveyed the room, he noticed several people he knew had passed were still missing. He had to answer the uncomfortable question of what he was doing there when he failed the graduation and then looked for a place to sit. There seemed to be 2 places empty beside Sasuke, but he could see his parents sitting there. There was another next to Hinata, but he feared the stalker girl might faint at his close proximity. He had once considered getting close to her, but he refrained in the end. He didn't want to drag her into his world. Then he noticed 2 latecomers nearing the classroom and his decision was made. He sat right into the misty form of Uchiha Makoto, ignoring the chill running through his body. He got the faint impression that the dead matron scowled, but he didn't care. He watched with amusement as Sakura and Ino fought furiously over who got into the room first. He couldn't decide whether their rivalry was funny or annoying. The girls finally burst through the unfortunate door and Sakura walked up to Naruto. "Move out," she commanded. "I want to sit next to Sasuke." "I can't see why," thought Naruto. Uchiha Fugaku was already occupying the seat, sneering at the world. "Can't you sit next to me?" he pouted. She scowled. Ino scowled. Makoto, standing beside her, mirrored the action. "Please," he added. Sakura, instead of answering, just hit him on his head and jumped over him right into the body of Uchiha Fugaku. The dead clan head sneered and then turned to Naruto. "It's your fault," he said. The blonde ignored him. He never understood why the Uchiha clan acted like their demise was his fault. He knew he shouldn't show any sign of noticing the spirit at all, but he couldn't keep the scowl from his face. The clan patriarch took offense. He struck the boy. Even though he couldn't physically harm him, the cold floating into his veins was very, very uncomfortable. Naruto couldn't bear it anymore and jumped from his seat. Unfortunately, at that moment a boy sitting in the lower row, Kutra was his name, moved and pushed Naruto in such a way he fell right on Sasuke. Their faces touched. "Oh no," thought the blonde. He pushed himself off, but the damage was already done. Sakura towered above him, her eyes blazing with fury. Ino's figure was only slightly less menacing. Naruto knew he was in for it. "Well, I said I needed it just yesterday." Naruto pushed himself into his seat. "That was more than I bargained for," he thought. His whole body was hurting and even his enhanced healing would take quite some time to undo all the damage the enraged Sasuke fan club had inflicted. Every occupant of the classroom, dead Uchiha included, was sneering at his misfortune. Finally, Iruka-sensei entered the classroom and everybody's attention turned to him. "Quiet," he ordered, and the chatter died down immediately. Then he launched a speech about their upcoming duty as shinobi of Konohagakure and the various perils accompanying their career choice. If he really wanted to make a lasting impression, he shouldn't be so boring, Naruto thought. He noticed several people dozing off, not only the obligatory slacker Shikamaru. Finally the speech ended and the main event came, namely the team assignments. Naruto watched with mild interest as various names were called and the genin in question reacted to their placement with either joy or disappointment. He waited for his name to come up. Finally, Team 7. Uzumaki Naruto, he perked up. Haruno Sakura, he jumped with joy. Just what he had wished for. And Uchiha Sasuke. No, was he really stuck with the entire Uchiha clan? He groaned in disappointment even as Sakura cheered on the victory of true love. Why does an outstanding shinobi like me have to be in the same team as the prick over there? Sakura looked at him like he just murdered her puppy. Good. Maybe that ridiculous display would make them reconsider the team assignments. Iruka scowled at him. Or maybe not. Naruto. The teacher started in a patient tone reserved for the slowest of pupils. Does he really think I'm that stupid? He should have learned that lesson with Mizuki. The teams are made to be balanced. Sasuke's scores were the best out of the 27 graduates, while you were the dead last. I want to see what good would his scores do to him once we're attacked by an enemy squad. Naruto thought grimly. Whose bright idea was it to let bureaucrats who probably weren't in the field since their genin days teach here anyway? Once I'm Hokage I'm going to change it. Just don't get into my way, dead last, Sasuke muttered. That was another reason he didn't want to be on the same team with the last Uchiha. His ego was so big that it could pass as a team on its own. He said so aloud. Sakura punched him. Iruka sighed exasperatedly. He proceeded to read the assignment of Team 8, clearly considering the matter closed. In the afternoon, we'll introduce your Junin senseis, said Iruka once everyone was placed on a team. Until then take a break. The students started to disperse, discussing the pros and cons of their new squads. Sasuke rose silently and walked out of the door, Sakura following him like a lost puppy. Sasuke pretended she didn't exist. Naruto scowled. This wasn't good. They were supposed to be a team and they weren't able to get on with each other. That would make them fail their sensei's test for sure. Naruto had heard about the test from one poor little graduate who failed it and was so desperate he committed suicide. He then wandered around the training grounds, muttering about teamwork, bells and one-eyed perverts. Naruto never quite gathered what exactly was the test like, but he knew it was a team pass or fail. He had to explain it to his teammates and get them to at least tolerate each other for the time being. else they were sure to fail. For a moment he considered failing on purpose to get out of Sasuke's team, but then decided against it. Considering what trouble he had with graduation this year, they might be able to block him entirely the next. And besides, he really wanted to be with Sakura. It meant he had to talk to two people who didn't want to speak to him. He sighed and went to search for his wayward teammates. He found Sakura easily. She was sitting alone on a park bench, looking dejected. Sasuke had obviously given her the slip. He walked up to her. She gave him an angry glare and proceeded to ignore him. This wouldn't do. "Hello, Sakura-chan," he greeted her. She didn't deign him with an answer. "Can I sit with you, now we're teammates?" No, her tone didn't leave any doubt she really meant it. That wasn't good. "I need to talk to you," he announced. "Get lost," she scowled. "It's important," he said seriously, but she was unimpressed. "I'm not interested." "It's about the team." He couldn't give up. It didn't sit well with her. "I said get lost." Her cute face scrunched in annoyance. That's a bad attitude to have, Naruto couldn't help but say. It wasn't the smartest thing to do. "I said shut up, baka." Sakura cracked her knuckles. "Do you want to stay in the team with Sasuke?" He fired his most powerful weapon. She hit him. "Leave me alone." The pink-haired girl shrieked. "I'd won Sasuke's heart a long time ago if you weren't interfering all the time. I don't want to have anything to do with you." "That's a problem," he pointed out. "We're teammates now, remember? Get lost." Her eyes were blazing with fury. Naruto realized that reasoning would get him nowhere and left. He tried to talk to Sasuke, but he doubted he'd get a better response. He found the dark-haired boy on a balcony, eating his lunch and brooding. His family stood with him and greeted Naruto with icy glares. Sasuke simply ignored him. "I need to talk to you." No reaction. Naruto mused whether it was better or worse than Sakura. Arjunin-sensei will give us a test to see whether he'd take us or send us back to the academy. I don't know what the test is, but it's a test of teamwork. Whole team either passes or fails. Sasuke didn't show whether he heard him at all, but Naruto thought he noticed a glimmer of interest in his eyes, but with the Uchiha it was hard to tell. He hoped it wasn't just his wishful thinking. "That's all. I'll be going." Sasuke continued eating his lunch. Naruto could only pray that he remembered his words. He didn't dare to hope that Sasuke would take them to his heart. After all, an Uchiha would never take advice from the class dobi. Naruto returned to where Sakura was still sitting. If she didn't want to talk to him, she sure would talk to Sasuke. The dark-haired boy was still preoccupied with his lunch and was unlikely to show up anytime soon. He was unlikely to show up here at all, period. He took a deep breath and performed the henge. He had a funny feeling in his stomach, but he wrote it off as anxiousness. He walked up to Sakura. The girl started glowing when he neared her. Naruto briefly wished she looked at him that way. "Hello, Sakura," he said, trying to sound as uncaring as he could. "Sasuke-kun," the girl blushed. Her green eyes were full of hope. Naruto suppressed the urge to groan. Was that how their team was going to be? There were dead fangirlish excuses for Kunoichi running around everywhere. "Sakura, I have to talk to you about the team." "Yes, Sasuke-kun," she beamed. "We're together, isn't it wonderful?" "It is." Sakura shone like a light. Naruto got a bad feeling in his stomach. Come to think of it, the feeling in his stomach had been going progressively worse for some time. He had to admit it wasn't only anxiousness. But he had to finish this talk, then he could go. "And if you want to stay on the same team with me." "What do you mean?" the pink-haired girl interrupted. "Of course I want to stay with you. I love you, Sasuke-kun." "That's well," he nodded approvingly. "So if you want to stay on the same team with me, you'll have to do as I say." "Crap, I didn't mean it to sound that way." "Of course I'll do anything you say, Sasuke-kun." Sakura's expression revealed she thought of being kissed. That girl does have a one-track mind, thought Naruto. And I have to finish it soon, I'm getting worse. "Well, later today, we'll go on a date?" The pink-haired girl looked so hopeful he felt like a villain for crushing her expectations. "No," Sakura looked utterly dejected, but he could find no sympathy for her in himself. His stomach was seriously aching now and the pink airhead was stalling him with her fangirlism. "What I meant to say was that after the Junin-sensei comes to pick us up," crap, thought Naruto as his stomach rumbled. Screw the talking, he had to go pronto. I'll tell you later, he said and ran towards the facilities. He ended up staying too long there, all the time cursing the spoiled milk he had drunk for breakfast. Why couldn't he go hungry? If it makes them fail the test. When he finally dared to leave the toilet, the break was almost over. Sasuke had finished his lunch in the meantime. Sakura had spotted him and trailed after him, making an utter fool of herself. He could only follow them into the classroom and wait for the Junin to come. So that's it. I hope I didn't write Sakura too bitchy. I didn't mean to be character bashing, but I ended up doing it nevertheless. Chapter 3 For everybody who asks so nicely, here comes another chapter. Regards to From Silence for story ideas. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto. I used some lines directly from the Naruto manga. Through the eyes of death they had been waiting for hours now. All the other teams had left with their senseis, only theirs didn't show up yet. Even Iruka sensei had gone home quite some time ago, so it was only the three of them and Sasuke's dead family now. They had made no secret about their displeasure with Naruto being on the same team as Sasuke, and they had quickly driven the orange-clad boy into the furthest corner of the room, formed the last Uchiha. The two living occupants of the classroom were ignoring him. Sasuke brooding, Sakura staring at Sasuke. Naruto was getting jittery. He had to sit here, he couldn't get out because their tardy sensei could show up anytime. He couldn't talk to his teammates, because they didn't want to talk to him. He couldn't train inside the classroom, because he wasn't sure how much he can trust those two. Oh, and he really shouldn't break all the furniture as well. There was only one thing left to do, and he wasn't sure whether pranking their new teacher was a good idea. He was nearly convinced it wasn't, but the boredom and the glares were slowly driving him out of his mind. It didn't take long for him to reach the stage when he couldn't restrain himself any longer. He got up from his seat and looked around for things he could use. There wasn't much in the nearly empty classroom, only some chalk, one blackboard eraser and a pointer. There weren't even any papers in the teacher's desk. Iruka had taken them when he left. "What are you doing, Naruto?" Sakura asked in an accusing tone. The blonde ignored her. He took the biggest chunk of chalk and inscribed something onto it with a senbon. Then he placed it over the door. "That's what he gets for being late," the orange-clad boy answered. "I'm not involved in this," the pink-haired girl declared, but Naruto noticed the glint of amusement in her eyes. Like a Junin would fall for such a stupid booby trap, Sasuke scoffed. His family was scowling at the demon vessel, but that was nothing new. Then the door slowly opened and the chalk fell right onto the head of a masked man. The chalk promptly exploded and Naruto had to laugh at the look at the masked ninja's face. His expression was priceless even though only one eye was visible from his whole face. The only downside was that the chalk was almost invisible in his silver hair. "He got you good, Kakashi," snickered the ghost of a boy behind the silver-haired Junin. Naruto immediately took a liking to him. Then he recognized the fan symbol on his collar. Another Uchiha? Oh no, but those already present barely spared him a glance, and it wasn't friendly. Just what was it with them? "I'm sorry, sensei. I tried to stop him," Sakura stammered. "Liar." Naruto thought. She was barely restraining herself from laughing at the sight of the ninja frantically trying to get the powder from his hair. Sasuke looked even more brooding than ever. His family, on the other hand, was clearly furious. What is he doing here? How dare he? The thief. And the traitor. Death to the both of them. Now that sounds like there is some interesting history there, the blonde mused. I wonder what it could be. How to say this? Kakashi scratched his chin through his mask. A white smear appeared on the black cloth. "My first impression of you is, I don't like you guys." "What?" The Uchiha boy behind Kakashi shouted. "They're wonderful. Just like we were. Or is that why you don't like them? If only Sensei was here." Sakura seemed downtrodden. Sasuke, his usual broody self, the dead Uchiha clan, was scowling fiercely than ever before. "Meet me at the roof in 5 minutes, he ordered and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. "I wonder how long we'll have to wait for him this time," Naruto mused. "It's not like the trip up there takes any more than a minute." As he walked up, another thought occurred in the blonde's mind. He's one-eyed and late. Could he be the same guy the dead kid was talking about? I hope not, because if he is, then we're in a world of trouble. They had been sitting on the rooftop for only a quarter an hour when the silver-haired man finally decided to show up. His mask was pristine black. Good work with the chalk, the Uchiha kid following him told Naruto. He had to go home for a new mask. Naruto smiled at that. The dark-haired boy with goggles was startled. You can see me? Naruto nodded slightly. Wonderful, he shouted. The rest of Uchiha clan was watching disapprovingly. The boy stuck out his tongue on them, to the amusement of Naruto. Anything funny? Kakashi asked. The blonde shook his head. Sakura scowled at him. Stop it, Baka. Sorry, Sakura-chan. He flashed her his biggest grin. She scowled deeper. Some people were impossible to please. Well, now everyone is paying attention, the Junin started. Let's begin with introducing ourselves. What do you want to know? The only living girl here asked. How about your likes, dislikes, your dreams about the future and things like that? The one-eyed man replied unenthusiastically. Why don't you introduce yourself first? Naruto suggested. Yes, Sakura agreed. You look kind of suspicious. Yes, the dead Uchiha boy shouted. So this is Hitaki Kakashi. He is the biggest prick you'll ever meet. His hobbies are reading porn, failing students, and let's not forget reading porn. His dream for the future is to get an even bigger stick up his rear. Naruto had to bit his tongue to prevent laughing aloud. Oh, me? The masked man looked like it was the biggest bother ever. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. Silliest name ever, his companion commented. I have no desire to tell you my likes or dislikes. You're still under 18, the goggled boy added. Dreams for the future, Still not a shred of imagination, the boy sighed. And I have a lot of hobbies. Like reading one book over and over again. So all he told us is his name, Sakura scowled. I don't understand how she was the smartest girl in class, if she cannot deduce anything from this, Naruto mused. Though compared to the rest of Sasuke's fan club. Now it's your turn, Kakashi said. Let's start on the right. Yosh. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. What I like is cup ramen. What I like even more is when Iruka-sensei pays for my ramen. What I dislike is waiting 3 minutes for my ramen to cook. And my dream is to surpass the Hokage. You told us nothing about yourself, so don't expect us to tell you anything in return, he thought. Hobbies, pranks, I guess. I see, muttered Kakashi in a way that indicated he didn't see it all. Naruto was liking him less and less, and he never liked him to begin with. Next, the Junin commanded. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are a lot of things I dislike and I don't really like anything. Moron, the goggled Uchiha boy commented, and, I can't really call it a dream, but I have an ambition. The resurrection of my clan and to kill a certain man. As expected from my son, Fugaku said. Kill the traitor, Sasuke. The rest of his clan nodded vigorously, only the one behind Kakashi looked troubled. Sakura looked at her idol with hearts in her eyes. Kakashi's expression was unreadable. Naruto didn't like it one bit. This was the first time he heard Sasuke say that, and he was taken aback at the sense of dark purpose radiating from the boy. I definitely have to do something about it, he decided. Oh. And lastly the girl. The Junin pointed at Sakura. It sounds like he didn't even bother to learn our names beforehand, Naruto realized. Did he decide to fail us the moment he was assigned to us? Well, looking at us I can't really fault him, but shouldn't he at least pretend to try? My name is Haruno Sakura, the pink-haired girl started blushing. The thing I like, her eyes flickered to Sasuke, well the person I like. Is, her blush deepened, and, my dream for the future, her face now competed with her dress, oh yay. Just like Rin, grinned Kakashi's dead follower. What I dislike is Naruto. She didn't have to shout it, the blonde thought. I take it back, the boy with goggles said, she's nothing like Rin. My hobby is, once more she looked at Sasuke and giggled. Kakashi rolled his single eye. Okay. So far for the introductions. Tomorrow we'll start our duty as shinobi. Yeah, duties, Naruto shouted, mostly to relieve the tense atmosphere. The attempt completely failed. First we are doing something only with the 4 of us, Kakashi announced. Not that again. His companion grabbed his head. Can't you skip it for once? Kakashi didn't answer, being unable to hear him. Naruto was now genuinely interested and also a bit apprehensive. Was that the dreaded genin test? What is it? What is it? He shouted to relieve some of his anxiety. Survival training, the silver-haired Junin answered. No, anything but that, the boy with goggles wailed. Survival training, Naruto asked. Why is our first duty training? Sakura added. We had enough training at the academy. And it prevented Yo from chasing Sasuke more, didn't it? Naruto couldn't help but think. This isn't normal training, Kakashi explained. This time I'm your opponent. Can't you skip it for once? The dead Uchiha made a show of tearing out his hair. Then, what is it? Naruto really wanted to know. Kakashi chuckled. The blonde could easily detect the nasty undertones. What's so funny, sensei? Sakura asked. Well, it's just that, when I tell you this you guys are totally going to freak out. Which is exactly what you want, you sadist. Naruto thought. Freak out, he asked aloud. He freaked out when Sensei told us, his dead teammate revealed with a snicker. Of the 27 graduates only 9 will be chosen to become genin, Kakashi announced. Liar, the boy with goggles shouted. The rest will be sent back to the academy. This training is a very difficult exam with a failure rate over 66%. In Kakashi's rendition it's 100, his companion commented. So he really is the one who drove that poor kid to suicide, Naruto mused. And he looks totally unrepentant. Sakura looked startled. Sasuke brooded. His dead family was furious. Don't you dare fail my son, Fugaku snarled. Makoto nodded in agreement, the expression in her eyes fiery. Kakashi was oblivious to them. I told you you'd freak out, he started laughing. I really don't. Like him, Naruto decided. Shouldn't I fail on purpose just to get out of this freaky team? Then Kakashi's dead teammate kicked the giggling Junin. Cut it off, he shouted. If only Sensei could see you now, he would be ashamed. Naruto decided that this team had its redeeming qualities. What? But we worked so hard. What's the point of graduating? Naruto wanted to shout something else, but he restrained himself from calling his new sensei names. Oh that, Kakashi said lazily. This was just to select those who have the chance to become genin. Everybody present, alive or dead, scowled at him. The silver-haired ninja was completely unperturbed. What? Anyway, tomorrow you have to show your real skill on the training ground, Kakashi announced. That's not true, the ghost of the Uchiha boy disagreed. Bring all the shinobi tools you have. Oh, and skip breakfast, you might throw up. You'll come hours late again, his dead teammate pointed out. The details are on this paper. And don't be late tomorrow, the silver-haired man commanded. Like it matters, his companion snickered. You're going to be 3 hours late as usual. Honestly, Kakashi, even I wasn't that bad. Might throw up, Sakura worried. Is it really that tough? Tougher, the boy with goggles replied. Kakashi then handed each one of them a paper. The pink-haired girl studied hers like her life depended on it. Sasuke scanned his and then crumpled it. My son will not fail, Fugaku said. Naruto briefly wondered whether the last living Uchiha in Konoha could hear it. Don't even bother reading it, the dead Uchiha outcast advised. Naruto. I'll tell you how to pass the test tomorrow. The orange-clad genin shot him a questioning look. The ghost nodded. Kakashi disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Sasuke got up and walked away, his dead family and Sakura trailing behind him. Naruto remained on the roof alone only with his new friend. So what should we do tomorrow? He asked. And why do you want to help us? And by the way, what's your name? Oh, I forgot. I'm Uchiha Obito from the great and famous Uchiha clan. Or it once used to be a great and famous clan, he added downtrodden. And I want to help you because it would help. Kakashi. He really needs to get a life, even if it means getting stuck with your jerks of teammates. And besides, it would be wonderful to finally have someone to talk to. That it would, Naruto agreed. But don't you mind Sasuke's entourage? I noticed they weren't looking at you too friendly. Bah, Obito shrugged, that doesn't bother me. They did it as long as we were alive. There's no reason for them to stop now that I'm dead. But enough about me for now. I'll tell you about the test quickly before I have to go haunt Kakashi again. That man really cannot be left alone, lest he does something stupid. Naruto laughed heartily. This ghost was enough to endure the rest of his team for. Kakashi sat alone in his flat. He mused about the team he was assigned today. The Hokage really wanted him to pass them, he could tell that much. But truth be told, he wasn't impressed. It began when the Hokage took him to see Naruto's flat. He noticed the bottle of spoilt milk on the table. How can anyone actually drink this? 10 points down for lack of situational awareness. And when he saw him in person, dressed in an orange eyesore he probably thought passed off as jumpsuit, prattling on about ramen and more ramen, he couldn't see how the boy ever graduated. Then there was the matter of the last Uchiha. He was Obito's last surviving relative and Kakashi was tempted to pass him just for that, but when he saw him, he had to change his opinion. Sure, he seemed to be the most competent shinobi out of the three of them, the only competent at all, but his fixation on killing his brother was unhealthy, bordering on an obsessive disorder. Scratch it, it probably was an obsessive disorder. The child should be in a mental ward, not the field. And the third member of the team, he shrugged when he recalled the only kunoichi among his students to be. The girl only thought about her love interest, completely forgetting about everything else. Even Rin wasn't as bad with her crush on him. Well, the crush maybe was, but at least she was a competent medic. Sakura didn't seem to have any redeeming quality. Girls like her usually didn't survive their first battle. And let's not forget about the essence of every squad, teamwork. Better not even go there. For one team member to openly admit to hate her teammate, that was unprecedented. They fully deserved to fail for this alone. Even he never did that to Obito, only berated him for his failings. Well, Obito would disagree, but Kakashi wouldn't hear him, so it didn't matter. Really, he would be doing them a service by failing them tomorrow. Such stupid punks wouldn't be able to survive in the field anyway. He understood what the Hokage was trying to do. Give him a squad that would resemble his old one. Well, it wasn't working. If anything, it made the situation even worse. They were a twisted caricature of what his team used to be, and even looking at them hurt. Especially Naruto. His sensei gave his life and soul for Konoha, for creating a warrior to protect it, and his sacrifice was wasted on the orange idiot. It was disgusting. It was all he could do to restrain himself from kicking the annoying goofball there and then. The only thing that helped him accomplish the feat was the thought of what he would do to him tomorrow. Yep, 1,000 years of pain were definitely on tomorrow's schedule. Then Obito entered the room, unnoticed by its other occupant. "Hey Kakashi," he shouted in his face. "You're going to pass them tomorrow, understand?" No reaction. Obito sighed. "Are you brooding again? You know this isn't good for your health. You really should get a life." Kakashi didn't hear him. The dead Uchiha scowled. "You're ignoring me just like you always did. Typical. Waste your time remembering things long gone. You know what? I didn't die to save you just so you can waste your time away. Do you hear?" He didn't. The boy with goggles sighed in exasperation. "Brood all you want, Kakashi, but if you fail them tomorrow, I'm going to haunt you for the rest of your life." He conveniently forgot the fact that he was already doing it, to absolutely no avail. Kakashi didn't react. He never did. That never stopped Obito for repeating the same speech every day. He was persistent, and it wasn't like he had anything better to occupy his time with. Maybe once he could get through to his teammate. And if not him, then maybe someone else will. Maybe. This is what happens when the story runs away from the author. I originally wanted a dark story, but then Obito found his way in and it ended funny instead. But I'm not rewriting it. Chapter 4 Author's Notes. Thanks to everybody who read and reviewed this. So here's the next chapter so many of you asked so nicely for. It's amazing how this little side project of mine attracts attention faster than my main one. But no matter how much you'll plead, I'll still concentrate mainly on Little Wooden Men. Warning. Sticks close to canon. Will anybody else complain about it after you have been warned? I promise I'll try to be more original in the next chapter. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto. I used some lines directly from the manga. Through the eyes of death the morning dawned bright and clear, when the three genin gathered on training grounds 7. All of them were carrying large backpacks on their backs and all of them were yawning. Sasuke and Sakura from not being used to getting up so early in the morning. Naruto from being awake most of the night. After Obito had told him how their team did the test and how Kakashi administered the test to every one of his assigned teams, he spent the afternoon scouting the training grounds, thinking up possible strategies and setting up traps. It always paid off to be prepared, and even if they should fail today, he was going to give their tardy sensei a run for his money. He was only a bit disappointed that it didn't occur to his teammates to at least take a look at the training grounds beforehand. It wasn't like they slept through Uruka's lessons about always being prepared. Was Sakura too busy bothering Sasuke and Sasuke too busy avoiding her that they didn't have the time? Or was it because Sasuke was the awesome Uchiha and he didn't need to prepare in order to pass? It didn't really matter anymore. Naruto glanced around and saw Kakashi's soul through the foliage, sitting near the memorial stone Obito had told him about. The ghost was there as well. When he saw Naruto, he glided over to him, much to the displeasure of Sasuke's dead entourage. "Hello," he greeted. "Are you ready for today?" Naruto nodded. "Good," Obito smiled. "It's about time somebody showed up, the jerk, isn't it?" Naruto nodded again. "Say something, dude." Naruto just shot a glance at his teammates. Sakura shot a strange glance at him. Naruto stood up and started walking away. He wanted to talk to Obito in peace. "Where are you going?" shrieked Sakura. She was sleepy and hungry and all in a bad mood, and Naruto gave her a perfect outlet for it. "I'm just taking a walk, Sakura-chan," he explained. "We are supposed to wait here, Baka." "I'm not going far. Our sensei can show up any time," the pink-haired girl scowled. "Ah, Sakura. He came 3 hours late yesterday and he couldn't even get to the roof on time. What makes you think he'll show up promptly today?" The kunoichi had no answer. Sasuke pretended he didn't hear them. "Go and don't come back, you demon, and the traitor as well." Fugaku snarled. "Go," Makoto added. Naruto obeyed. Nobody tried to stop him. "So what do you want?" he asked once they were out of sight, and hopefully earshot as well. "Me want something?" Obito had a too innocent expression. "Then why did you come? Can't I just come visit?" "You can, but you make me look like a lunatic, talking to thin air and all." He gestured towards his teammates. "They already think I'm an idiot." "Then let them," the Uchiha suggested. "That's easy for you to say," the blonde scoffed. "You aren't stuck on a team with them." "Am I not? I can't leave Kakashi, remember. Sucks for you." "Tell me about it." Obito rolled his eyes. "He's coming here," Naruto whispered. "We have to quit." "You're no fun," Obito complained, but Naruto ignored him. He returned to his teammates. They eyed him strangely, but he had lots of experience ignoring it. After a while he noticed even Kakashi going away. He yawned and laid down to catch on lost sleep. "What are you doing, Baka?" Sakura scolded him. "Sleeping," the blonde replied. "That is until you woke me up." "I can't understand how you can sleep at a time like that," the pinkette huffed. "Easily," he explained. "I lay down and close my eyes." "Baka," she scowled. "Our sensei can show up anytime." "I don't think so." He could see Kakashi once again staring at the memorial stone out of the corner of his eye. He snuggled down comfortably and closed his eyes once more. Sakura huffed, but didn't bother him anymore. He promptly fell asleep. Kakashi was staring at the memorial stone. For one time, he wasn't reminiscing about the past, but about the 3 genin currently waiting for him. They would call him tardy and lazy, but he had actually a good reason for not coming on time today. It was a part of his test. "You would weep if you could see them, sensei," he thought. "They're pathetic, nothing like we were. Sure, Rin had a crush on me the size of Hokage Monument, but even she had nothing on Sakura, and Sasuke. He's so cold and obsessed. I know I was bad, but surely not like that. And Naruto. He's a joke. What is he even thinking, talking to thin air? Is he insane or what? How can somebody like him have anything to do with you? It hurts just to look at him. It feels like you died in vain." And their teamwork, or rather lack of, it got even worse since yesterday. I gave them time to learn to work together, to make a strategy, and what did they do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sasuke is brooding and probably plotting ways to kill Itachi. Sakura is fawning over him and Naruto is sleeping. And they call themselves shinobi. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Never mind. I'm going to fail them and then I won't have to hear about them anymore. The council can go screw themselves for all I care. In fact, it would be hilarious watch them pop a vein or two. You would love it too. Wouldn't you? I know how much you disliked dealing with them. "Hey, Kakashi," Obito called. Don't you think you left them waiting long enough? The Junin didn't answer. He obviously didn't think it was long enough. Obito sighed. This was going to be a long and boring wait. Naruto. Hey. Naruto. Wake up. The shouting and a feeling of cold were what woke the blonde up. Obito was kneeling above him, trying to shake him and failing, since he had no physical body. I'm awake, he mumbled. Sakura looked at him strangely. Good, Obito said. Kakashi's coming your way. There was no need to say it. Naruto could already see for himself. Then the silver-haired Junin appeared in front of them. Hey guys, good morning, he shouted. You're late, Sakura and Naruto shrieked in unison. Kakashi didn't even acknowledge their outburst. No excuse, Obito raised an eyebrow. You're slipping, Kakashi. The man in question ignored even that and put an alarm clock on a nearby log. Naruto smiled inwardly. So far everything went like Obito had told him. Okay, it's set for noon, the masked man announced. Then he showed them 2 bells tied with strings. Here are 2 bells, he said like they couldn't see them for themselves. Your task is to take these from me before the time's up. Those who don't have bell by noon get no lunch. I'll not only tie you to one of those stumps, but I'll eat my lunch right in front of you. It's official, Naruto thought. He is a sadist. Sasuke's and Sakura's stomachs rumbled. Naruto had done as Obito told him and ate his breakfast. You only have to get 1 bell, Kakashi continued. There are only 2, so one of you would be definitely tied to the stump. And the person who doesn't get a bell fails, so at least one of you will be sent to the academy. Most likely all 3, Kakashi thought. Liar. Liar. Liar, Obito chanted. His dead clansman scowled. My son won't fail, Fugaku said. Makoto nodded in approval. If you want, you can use shuriken and kunai, the Junin offered. You won't succeed unless you come at me intending to kill. But, you'll be in danger, Sakura stammered. And she seemed so clever at the academy, Naruto thought ruefully. What does she think a bunch of fresh genin can do to a seasoned Junin? Yeah, you're so slow you can't even dodge a chalk, he couldn't help but remit him. We'll definitely kill you. The traps I've set beforehand should help a lot. In the real world, those with no talent often bark the loudest. Kakashi said in a tone reserved for the slowest of children. So far so good, Naruto thought. He's already underestimating me. You're in for a surprise, Obito shouted, but his warning fell on deaf ears. Well, ignore Mr. Dead last and start when I say. Naruto scowled while inwardly he was laughing with glee. So far Kakashi had been reacting just as he expected. Time for the next part for the plan. He put on a furious expression. He didn't even have to pretend. The one-eyed man was seriously pissing him off. He withdrew a kunai and jumped straight at Kakashi. And exactly as he expected, the Junin blocked his attack and twisted his arm around, so that the kunai was now pointing at his own neck. Naruto wriggled, trying to get free, but the silver-haired man held him steady. Calm down. I haven't said start yet. Sakura was watching it in disbelief. Geez, you would think she never heard about Junin before, Naruto thought. Sasuke on the other hand finally looked genuinely interested in something. Why so harsh, man? Obito shouted. Just kill the demon already, Fugaku advised. Well, you seem finally prepared to come at me with the intent to kill, Kakashi said with amusement. So you finally acknowledge me? It seems like I'm finally beginning to like you guys. He sounded utterly insincere. Come on, Kakashi, Obito prodded. Aren't they adorable? Kakashi finally released his captive. Naruto scowled, massaging his wrist. Inwardly he was doing a victorious jig. Mission accomplished. The tag was safely in the place. Now he only had to wait for the right moment to activate it. Begin! Kakashi shouted. The 3 genin scattered. Kakashi stood alone in the middle of the field. He couldn't see any of his students, but that didn't mean he didn't know where they were. He was a Junin for a reason while they were still genin. The most important thing for a shinobi is to be able to hide yourself, he said. Niece, they're hidden well, he thought. Then an orange eyesore appeared right in front of him. He closed his eye in exasperation. Sensei, is that even possible? He's a complete idiot. Come here and fight me, Naruto shouted at the top of his lungs. It made Kakashi wince. I said fight me, the blonde repeated. You're a little bit off, Kakashi replied. No, you are, Obito corrected. The only thing that's a bit off is your haircut, the orange-clad genin called running towards Kakashi. The Junin reached into his pocket. The genin slowed his approach, watching him warily. Shinobi fighting lesson number 1, Taijutsu, Kakashi said in the talking to an idiot voice. Tell me you aren't going to do that, Obito whined. Please no, Kakashi took out a small orange book. Oh no, Obito clutched his head. Do you have to read it all the time? Get a life finally, why don't you, man? What's wrong? Kakashi taunted. Hurry up and attack me. But, hey, what's with the book? He's a pervert, Obito explained. Pervert, 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 pervert. I just want to know what happens next, the silver-haired man answered. Oh man. You've read it only about 100 times. But don't worry, it won't make a difference against you, guys, the open pervert added. Naruto just about had it. Kakashi was going down, painfully. I'll totally kick your ass, he attacked Kakashi. The Junin blocked. Without effort, his attention seemingly concentrated on the book. This went on for a minute until Kakashi got bored with it and with great speed appeared behind Naruto. A shinobi isn't supposed to get caught from behind, Baka, he said, folding his hands into a seal, still holding the book between his palms. Not that, Obito wailed. Anything but that. Naruto, run away, you're going to get killed, Sakura shrieked. Maybe there is hope for us, Naruto thought. Too late, Kakashi announced gleefully. He slammed his fingers into Naruto's butt. Hidden Leaf Ancient Taijutsu Style. 1000 Years of Pain. This actually has a name, Naruto wondered before his clone dispersed and he was hit with very painful memories. Ouch! How comes this isn't a kinjutsu? There must be some law prohibiting doing that to children. Kakashi was surprised. I was fighting a clone all the time. I didn't even notice. But where is the real one? He got you, Obito danced around. Naruto in his hiding spot smiled. He had gathered a lot of information about Kakashi's fighting style and he discovered that Sakura might be willing to cooperate after all. Things were looking up. Then Sasuke decided to attack. It seemed like the perfect opportunity. Kakashi was distracted, puzzling over what Naruto had just done. He launched multiple shuriken at him. Kakashi batted them away without even looking. A set of kunai came after that and this time the Junin was hit. Or so Sasuke thought, because the next moment he turned into a log. Kawarimi. Crap. He now knows where I am. He quickly jumped from his hiding position, but it did him little good. Kakashi appeared right in front of him, the infernal book in his hands. So, the village's most powerful clan, the Uchiha clan. This could be interesting, he drawled lazily. Sasuke's only response were thrown shuriken. Such obvious attacks are useless, Kakashi taunted. That was when he noticed one of the projectiles cutting a wire. A trap. A number of kunai sailed towards him. He evaded without trouble. The Sasuke jumped at him and engaged him in close combat. Naruto was running through the woods. He could see Sakura's soul in front of him clearly. It didn't take him long to reach the girl. Sakura-chan, he whispered. What do you want, Baka? Do you want to pass? Of course. Then we have to cooperate. Cooperate with you? She scowled. I won't let Sasuke fail. You won't. Whole squad either passes or fails. What? But Kakashi-sensei said, and you believed him. He is testing our will to stick together by pitting us against each other. And I'm supposed to believe that, Baka? You're just trying to separate me from Sasuke-kun, so you'll have me all for yourself. That's not true, Sakura-chan. Liar, she hit him on the head. This way you're going to fail and be separated from Sasuke for sure. Hey, are you hungry? I brought some food. He showed her a box of onigiri. Sakura's stomach rumbled loudly. You brought food? But Kakashi-sensei said, and once again you believed him. He lied once, why can't you believe he lied again? But he's our sensei, and he's testing us. Eat up. Your brain is going to work better with some fuel. She punched him again. I take it as thank you. He rubbed his sore head. Then he was assaulted by memories from a dispelled clone. Kakashi just got Sasuke, he announced. What? Sakura startled. How do you know? Naruto ran through the memories in his head. The Uchiha had put up quite a fight, but to no avail. Kakashi was too good for him. And in the end, what had possessed him to stand so long on one spot? Wasn't he supposed to be a genius? He should know better than that. Now I know you are a liar, the pink-haired girl scoffed. Get lost, I don't want to do anything with you. She stood up and ran off. Naruto sighed. This wasn't going well. He created a cage bunshin to follow Sakura and went to find Sasuke, but he didn't have much hope in the Uchiha listening to him. Sakura was racing through the trees. She had to find Sasuke-kun quickly. She couldn't believe Naruto when he said that Sasuke was already defeated, but there was always doubt. What if something really happened to Sasuke-kun? Then she saw Kakashi standing in front of her, reading his book like he didn't have a care in the world. He didn't notice me, he thought. Sakura behind you. She turned startled. Kakashi-sensei was now standing directly behind her, his hands forming the rat seal. Leaves swirled around, obscuring her vision. When they cleared, Kakashi was nowhere to be seen. What was that? What's going on? Where's Sensei? She thought frantically. Sakura. That voice. Sasuke-kun. He's calling for me. Kaya. Inner Sakura was dancing with glee. She ran where she heard the voice from. There was Sasuke leaning to a tree trunk, kunai and shuriken protruding from him, blood flowing freely from his wounds, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Sasuke-kun, she whispered. She couldn't believe it. So Naruto was right after all. Ah, she screamed and fainted. That might have been a bit too much, Kakashi muttered, not even lifting his eye from his book. Chapter 5 AN. So here comes another chapter. There is more originality than in the previous one, though some parts are still keeping close to the manga. I promise that the next chapter, which is written completely and would be posted next week, is completely original. Well, besides the obligatory Kakashi comes late scene. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, through the eyes of death. Naruto scowled. Sakura had refused to work with him and now she was out, and she fell for a genjutsu, of all things. Wasn't she supposed to be good with them? And Sasuke claimed he didn't want anything to do with him even though he was stuck up to his neck in the ground. His dead clansmen were standing around, talking about how this was undignified and shameful for an Uchiha, and Fugaku kept repeating that his son wouldn't let himself be captured like that. Sasuke was scowling furiously and insisted that he didn't need Naruto's help, to the approval of the rest of his clan. Naruto's suspicion that he was aware of them was strengthened. He left a shadow clone with Sasuke in case the boy changed his opinion. He now had no choice than try and get the bells by himself. It went against the spirit of the test, but he might be able to salvage the result by donating them to his teammates. He looked at the sky. Noon was nearing rapidly and his time was running out. He had to hurry. Finding Kakashi was no problem. He was still near where Sakura lay, flipping through his book lazily. It wasn't good position to launch his plan. He'd have to lure the Junin closer to the river first. He made several clones and sent them to their positions. Then he stood at the clearing where he had fought the silver-haired man before. Hey, Kakashi, he shouted. Are you up for a rematch? Kakashi sighed. Was that even possible? Didn't the kid ever learn anything? But wait, the last time it was a clone. What was this one? Was Naruto planning something? It would be better to be careful. But he was only a genin. What could he possibly do? He walked slowly towards the orange-clad boy, book still in his hand, his eyes seemingly fixed on it, but his attention was elsewhere. He suspected a trap waiting for him somewhere, but he was confident he could avoid whatever the genin had prepared for him. Say, Naruto, he drawled lazily, what makes you think you'll fare better now that you did before? You'll see, Obito grinned. It's really something, you're going to like it. Well, maybe not you, but I certainly will. Why don't you come and see for yourself? His loud student taunted. So it's really a trap, Kakashi thought. I wonder what it is. Probably nothing too dangerous, but what if it damaged my precious book? Nah, that would be showing him I take him seriously. He walked with the book still opened in front of his face. Maybe it was thanks to this that he missed Naruto's victorious smile. You're going to get it, his dead Uchiha teammate shouted into his ear, which had absolutely no effect on the masked man. Naruto waited until the silver-haired man almost reached him before springing into action. He jumped forward and threw a violent kick at Kakashi, which the Junin batted away lazily. But in the next moment he realized he was surrounded by dozens of Narutos. How did they appear so suddenly? He had no time to perform the technique. He decided it didn't really matter. What mattered was that he wasn't able to block all their attacks with one hand preoccupied. One of the clones came dangerously close to getting the bells. He escaped via a quick kawarimi and moved to put his book back into his pouch. That was when he realized he didn't have it anymore. Loser, loser, Obito sing-songed dancing around. Kakashi was worried. Where was his book? Did he accidentally drop it while fighting the Cage Bunshin? His questions were soon answered by a loud shout. Hey! The one-eyed man looked to where did the voice come from. He saw a Naruto standing in the river, holding his prized possession right above the surface. Oh no, thought Kakashi. One wrong movement and he drops it into the water. The thought was enough to make him hyperventilate. I have your precious, the orange brat boasted. I'll return it to you for your bells, oh, and try something and I'll throw it into the river. It sounded like a fair trade, but the genin had made a grievous miscalculation. He had touched Kakashi's pride and love. Such action couldn't go unpunished. Meanwhile the blonde was feeling quite pleased with himself. He had successfully lured his sensei into an area littered with transformed shadow clones. One of them had managed to successfully switch himself with Kakashi's book when the Junin loosened his grip on it. And yet another had grabbed the Icha Icha paradise and exchanged himself with a clone standing in the river, on a place surrounded with traps. Now he held Kakashi's prized possession hostage. From what Obito had told him, the one-eyed pervert would do anything to get it back. Kakashi reined his racing heart under control. He couldn't afford to do anything that would endanger his precious. He tried to play it cool. And why should I care? He shouted as disinterestedly as he managed. I could buy another one anytime. I suppose you might, the Jinchuriki admitted, but it wouldn't have the author's autograph with a personal dedication. How did he notice it so soon? Kakashi sweated. He owned you, his dead teammate gloated. Admit it and give him the bells. You must know you lost. Kakashi refused to admit he had lost. Not to a genin. His reputation as an elite Junin of Konohagakure was at stake. If his peers ever got wind he got bested by the village's idiot, he would never hear the end of it. He was going to show that little upstart his place. But the situation was dire and he had to approach it with utmost caution. That was why he did something he would never admit to doing when facing somebody below cage level. He reached to his headband and uncovered his left eye. So you like my present? Obito squealed. But aren't you ashamed of yourself, using it now? The living man, quite predictably, didn't respond. He opened his left eye. The red pupil with 3 spinning tomo was revealed. I can see, Obito rejoiced. I can see, the only Sharingan user in Konoha surveyed the terrain around the Naruto holding his love prisoner. Several clones were standing guard around him and bright spots randomly scattered around indicated places with high chakra concentration. Some kind of traps, he mused. I wish I knew what exactly those are. Too bad I can't see through things. Now it would come handy. Never mind, if I know where they are, I can avoid them. With that thought he covered his Sharingan again. I can't see, Obito wailed, clutching at his eyes. I can't see, it's bad. Kakashi silently moved from his position. He had gathered enough information about the enemy, now was the time to act. A brief analysis of Naruto's defense was enough to show a glaring weakness. It was concentrated on the ground. He didn't see anything that would protect him from an attack coming from underwater. With his experience, the elite Junin really should have known that not seeing something didn't mean it wasn't there. He reached the river not far from the genin's position, but he was hidden by a turn in the river. He quietly slipped underwater. It was cold and he couldn't see more than an arm's length ahead, but he was used to worse. He stealthily swam towards where Naruto stood. He oriented himself by his chakra signature. It was impossible to miss. He was almost there. Only a couple more strokes and he'd be in position to attack. He'd save his precious and he'd show that little twit why he shouldn't have messed with him. Then his hand hit a ninja wire, completely invisible in the murky water, and he realized he was out of time. He jumped forward, or at least tried to. His feet found no purchase on the muddy bottom and he slipped. He could only listen in terror as a loud splash announced his precious falling into the water. Desperation lent him speed. He reached the drowning book in an eye blink and jumped with it out of the water. He noticed Naruto's clones appearing around him, but he paid them no mind. One quick Kawarimi got him out of their reach. You poor dear, Obito cooed. You almost lost your book, oh, woe to you. He seated himself in a tree and examined the mess that became of his precious. He realized it wasn't as bad as he originally thought. The orange book was dripping wet, but it wasn't thoroughly soaked. It wasn't in the water long enough for that. The damage would be minimal if he dried it carefully. But the mere fact that there was any damage infuriated him to no end. He plotted the most creatively painful ways to kill the culprit until the alarm rang. So late already? He looked at the sun. It indeed was noon. Well, at least the decision who to tie up is easy today. Naruto was fuming. He came the closest to the bells, at least in his opinion, and yet he ended tied to the stump. Why wasn't it Sakura? She's the one who did nothing. That's so unfair, he seethed. But it's also nothing new. It made him seethe even more. Hey, you were amazing, Obito reassured him. He actually used my eye. The blonde had no idea what was it supposed to mean, but he couldn't ask. He doesn't do it unless he fights really kick-ass ninja. Kakashi stood in front of the three genin, what little was visible of his face completely unreadable. He thought over their performance in the test. Sakura had proven herself completely useless, exactly as he had expected. Sasuke showed more battle prowess that he gave him credit for, but even he didn't show anything particularly surprising. Only Naruto managed to do that. He realized he had to completely change his opinion of the boy. He obviously had some ability and he was smart enough to use it. Once his rage over the stolen and dunked Icha died down, he had to admit that the boy was actually quite good. Maybe he isn't a disgrace to Sensei's name. I wonder why Academy records said the opposite. But what was the most important thing? They showed absolutely no hint of teamwork. Even now they were staring ahead, not interacting with each other except for Sakura's admiring glances for Sasuke. No matter how good their individual performance was, if they refused to work with each other, he couldn't possibly pass them. But maybe, just maybe, he might give them another chance. Well, he started lazily, there's no need for you to go back to the academy. Sakura perked up. She looked like an adorable puppy. Did she really believe she passed? -points for her. Sasuke barely acknowledged it. He looked like he considered his success a given. Not that again, Obito yelled. Naruto sighed. Kakashi wondered what that could mean. All three of you should quit as shinobi, he finished and let it sink. Outrageous. Fugaku shouted. You can't fail my son, thief. The Uchiha are better than you. Makoto agreed with a nasty sneer on her pretty face. I said not that again, the goggled dead Uchiha whined. Sakura looked like somebody just kicked her puppy. Sasuke glared daggers. Naruto looked like he expected it. Most intriguing, the Junin thought. Q quit as ninjas. Sakura stammered. Why? She was at the verge of tears. She couldn't be separated from her Sasuke-kun. We won't be, inner Sakura assured her. Because all of you are just punks who don't deserve to be ninja, he elaborated. Predictably Sasuke attacked him. Kakashi moved swiftly, throwing the last Uchiha to the ground, kneeling on his back and twisting his arm, demonstrating the difference between a seasoned Junin and a fresh genin. How dare you treat my son like that, you trash, the dead Uchiha clan head shouted. Yeah, man, you're harsh, Obito agreed. That's why you're a punk, the Junin stated. Don't step on Sasuke-kun. Sakura screeched. Naruto winced. The volume was unbelievable. Wow, she sure can scream, the goggled ghost commented. Kakashi ignored the disturbance and spoke seriously. Are you guys underestimating ninja? Huh? Why do you think you were divided into teams and doing this training? Huh? The pink-haired girl blinked. What does that mean? That means, Naruto started, that we are supposed to be a team. Can't you figure it out yourself? Shut up, Baka, she shouted. Nobody asked you. On the contrary, Sakura, the silver-haired man interrupted. She looked at him befuddled. I asked every one of you. Naruto already gave his answer. Can you do the same? We were divided into teams, because we are supposed to be a team? She looked at their sensei questioningly. She was unsure of her answer, but she couldn't come up with anything better. And what about Sasuke? Kakashi looked down on his captive. What say you? Come on, Sasuke-kun. Obito mocked Sakura's fangirlish tendencies. You're so clever and smart, you can get it in no time. Behind him Fugaku kept demanding Kakashi released his son. Naruto had to bite his tongue. The dead Uchiha were hilarious. Whatever the living Uchiha said was muffled by the dirt he was currently biting. Judging from his tone, it was probably unpublishable. No answer? Well, the masked man shrugged. It's your loss. As your teammates almost guessed, the answer is teamwork. But, the pinkette started meekly, but then found her courage. What do you mean, teamwork? There are only 2 bells. So you noticed? Obito snickered. Even if we work together, one of us will still fail. The pink-haired girl was enraged. What teamwork? That just makes us fight each other. Of course. Kakashi shouted. The test is purposefully set up to make you fight among yourselves. Nasty. His teammate kicked him. Sakura looked puzzled. Naruto simply watched him with interest. That in turn interested the Junin. He had never seen such reaction before. The purpose is to see whether you can forget about your own interests and work together, he explained. A true Uchiha serves no one, needs no one, Fugaku stated. Makoto nodded in agreement. Yet you guys, he shook his silver head and sighed. Sakura, you were only worrying about Sasuke. I know that Naruto approached you, but you left. Why? He didn't give her time to answer. Sasuke. You just assumed the others would go into your way and tried to do everything by yourself. My son can do everything by himself. It's expected from my son. It was certain now. Sasuke could hear them, at least a bit. Naruto. You were running around by yourself. And what was that stunt supposed to mean? You were told to get the bells, not my book. You said we could use anything, the blonde replied. There was no rule about blackmail. I simply targeted something you didn't guard as closely as the bells. And teamwork requires willing teammates and I sorely lack those. How dare you? Sakura shouted, punching him. You see what I mean? Naruto looked at Kakashi. And the Junin could see. It appeared that at least one of his genin had understood. But one was too little. He needed at least another one to get it before he would pass them. Who would have thought? He tilted his head. The dead last understands something the rookie of the year and the smartest kunoichi just don't get. It makes me really wonder about the Academy standards. You're not the only one, thought Naruto. Sakura was scandalized, Sasuke furious. The dead Uchiha clan was scowling. Individual play that disrupts the team can put your comrades in danger, the sensei pointed out. Like it matters, Fugaku said. They're not Uchiha. And even get you killed. Kakashi finished seriously. For example, Sakura, kill Naruto or Sasuke dies. For a moment, he feared she might actually obey. What? She shouted, her eyes darting between her 2 teammates. You see? If a hostage is taken, you will have tough choices and then die. Like we had a tough choice, Obito said sadly. It was completely out of character for him. Naruto yearned to drag the story from him. You will be risking your lives during your duties. Look at this, he pointed at the memorial. The numerous names carved in this stone. My name. These are ninja who are recognized as heroes of the village. But they aren't just normal heroes. They're the heroes who died while on duty. This is a memorial. My best friend's name is already carved here. Some friends we were, Obito muttered sarcastically. Kakashi looked over his shoulders to the 3 genin. You, guys, I'll give you one more chance. But after lunch, I'll make it even tougher to get the bells. Those who still wish to challenge can eat lunch. But don't give any to Naruto. Meanie. You're such a meanie. It's punishment for stealing my book. Hey. That wasn't against the rules, Naruto protested, but the Junin's glare silenced any further defense. I am the rules here. Got it? You're a meanie. Kakashi finally released Sasuke and disappeared. The Uchiha slowly picked himself up from the ground. This is another test, Obito hinted before chasing after Kakashi. You don't have to give me any food, the blonde said. I'm fine. Like we'd want to, Sakura muttered between bites. Naruto rolled his eyes. Teamwork, he whispered. Sakura scowled. Sasuke looked thoughtful, though with him it was always hard to tell. My son will not fail, Uchiha Fugaku stated for who knows what time today. Then Naruto's stomach rumbled. Sasuke sighed. He handed the remainder of his lunch to his bound teammate. "Here," he said. "Don't feed the monster," his father shouted. Sakura stared at him wide-eyed. "Hey, Sasuke-kun," Sensei just said, another lie. Sasuke wanted to say, but couldn't. He suspected the Junin was listening on them. He had to make it look like he actually cared about Naruto more than his career, when in reality he only figured this was another trick test. "Don't worry," he tried to placate the kunoichi, "I don't sense him nearby. Because he's well hidden. After lunch, we'll work together to get the bells. Without food, he'd just be in the way." Sakura looked at him thoughtful and then decided to follow her idol's lead. Maybe it would make him fall in love with her. He'll be all ours, inner. Sakura boasted. "Shanaru." Then Kakashi appeared in front of them in a swirl of leaves. The three genin startled. "You three," he made a dramatic pause, pass, Chapter 6. AN. For those who complained, here finally comes a completely original chapter, maybe except one scene. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, Through the Eyes of Death. It was the first day of training after Team 7 passed Kakashi's test. Their sensei had told them to meet them at the same training grounds at 8. It was now 10:15 and he was nowhere to be seen. "Where is he?" Sakura fumed. "Probably wherever he was yesterday and the day before that," Naruto answered. "Irresponsible. And preposterous. Treating an Uchiha like that." Fugaku sneered. "He shouldn't be teaching my boy," Makoto agreed. "Sasuke deserves better." The only living Uchiha present seemed to agree wholeheartedly. Everybody deserves better, Naruto thought. What have we done to deserve this? But then again, maybe the other instructors are even worse in their own way. He cut his musings short. He had other, more pressing concerns on his mind. Namely what to do about Sasuke's dead family. The more he watched them together, the more he was convinced that his teammate could indeed hear them. Either that or he had exactly the same thought process, which was a possibility as well. He had tried to help the brooding boy before, but failed. He had tried to speak to him directly back then and he refused to respond. Maybe he should deal with his ghostly entourage now. But how? The dead Uchiha despised him even more than the living one. Maybe Obito could help? But the rest of his clan didn't hold him in high esteem either. And that didn't solve the problem of how should he talk to them without being catered off to the mental ward. Before he could come up with a solution, there was a swirl of leaves and Kakashi appeared in front of them. His little orange book was thankfully absent. He's probably scared it would get destroyed. "You're late." Naruto and Sakura shouted in unison and then looked at each other in surprise. "A black cat crossed my path and I had to take the long way," Kakashi explained. "That's my line, you thief," Obito shouted. "Can't you come up with your own excuse?" Naruto was hard-pressed not to laugh. "Disgusting," Fugaku commented. "Liar." Naruto and Sakura shouted once again. Sasuke slightly winced at their combined volume. "Ruffians," the dead Uchiha clan head snorted. "Unworthy to associate with my son." "Anyway," the one-eyed man said completely undisturbed, "now that everybody's here, let's start training." "Yay! Training!" Naruto exclaimed happily. If he had to wait any longer, it would have driven him crazy. "Ruffian," Fugaku repeated. "That's some enthusiasm," Kakashi remarked. "If you're so eager, let's get started. The three of you, run 100 laps around the training grounds at top speed and don't use chakra to aid you." "What?" Sakura looked horrified. That was considerably more than she was used to running. "I said 100 laps, do you have trouble hearing?" "No? Now go." The three genin obeyed and ran. The Junin took out his book and started reading. He had plenty of time to finish the chapter. Naruto and Sasuke took it as a challenge. They tried to outdo each other. At first Sasuke was faster, but after about 40 laps his stamina began to run out and Naruto, who didn't slow down the whole time, began gaining on him again. The last Uchiha couldn't allow himself to be bested by the dead last and drew on his reserves, cheered on by his deceased clan. It lasted him another 30 laps. Then he slowed down again. Naruto kept a steady pace the entire race. He caught up with the dark-haired boy during lap 94. "Why so slow, Teme?" he shouted. The Rookie of the Year grunted and pushed the last dregs of his endurance into his legs. It got him through exactly 4 laps. During round 99 he began falling behind, and in the last lap Naruto gained a fair lead on him. "Yay! I won!" he shouted, dancing around. "You won, great," Obito congratulated him. Sasuke dropped down and panted heavily, his family scowled. "Unacceptable," his father said. "My son shouldn't have lost to the monster." Even Makoto frowned. Sakura was at lap 72. Kakashi sighed. There was much work to be done if she seriously wanted to be a kunoichi, though he had some doubts about it. Finally even the pink-haired girl finished and promptly collapsed. The open pervert closed his book with a slap. "Well, now you finished the warm-up, we can start with the actual training," he announced nonchalantly. Sakura nearly panicked, but was too winded to do it properly. "Let's start with some light sparring," he ordered. "Sasuke, Naruto, you two are first." The two boys obediently moved to the middle of the clearing. "Taijutsu only for now. Begin." The Uchiha wasted no time in tackling his opponent. The blonde blocked his violent punch, but winced under the force of the impact. The dark-haired boy gave him no time to recuperate and followed with a roundhouse kick. The orange-clad boy jumped back to avoid it. The class prodigy was on him again before he could blink. He was furious about his loss in the run and he wanted to get back at the other genin for it. The fight was pretty one-sided. Sasuke was called the genius for a reason, and Naruto's taijutsu was merely mediocre, thanks to his lack of actual practice. He lasted as long as he did only due to his resilience, endurance and high pain tolerance. The last Uchiha was getting more and more furious. How comes he couldn't defeat the class idiot? He had hit him numerous times, but the dobi just kept bouncing back. No matter how many times he pushed him to the ground, he always got up. He barely heard Sakura asking their sensei why he didn't call the match. Kakashi answered her that in real life there was no calling the match, you fought until the end. That was right. He would fight until the end. He would stomp the dead last to the ground until he wouldn't be able to dig himself out. He attacked with more power than before. Unfortunately for him, he overreached, and when the foxy boy narrowly dodged his fist, he found himself completely open to a counterattack. He didn't realize this until Naruto's fist in his ribs sent him flying backwards. He roared in pain and anger. How dare he strike him? He jumped to his feet and ran at the short blonde. The boy had hard time blocking even few of his punches. He tried to form a counterattack, but Sasuke didn't let him. Soon he forced Naruto on his back and then stomped on him with all his might. "There you have it, Dobi," he sneered. "As expected from my son." Fugaku praised him. "Good work, Sasuke," Makoto smiled gently. "You're so mean," Obito chastised him. "What had he done to you?" Naruto only spat out blood. Kakashi frowned. This was bad. A healthy competition between teammates improved their individual performance, but what he witnessed today went far beyond that. He would have to do something about it or the team wouldn't be able to function. "The match is over," he called. Sasuke won. "Now Sakura, you'll spar against Sasuke." The pink-haired girl looked unsure of herself. She never doubted she would lose, but she was scared her idol might beat on her like he beat on Naruto. That baka deserved it, inner Sakura supplied, but it wasn't enough to convince her. She reluctantly took her place facing her crush. "Begin," the silver-haired man ordered. The fight was quick. The young Avenger attacked without preamble and the fangirl made a few half-hearted attempts at defense. She ended on the ground within a minute. Sasuke won, the Junin declared. Inside he was frowning. The girl proved herself completely useless. There was one last chance for her. Now Sakura fights Naruto. The last Uchiha strolled away and Naruto resumed his position in the middle of the clearing. He seemed completely unbothered by the beating the Rookie of the Year had inflicted on him. "Begin." Sakura immediately attacked. Naruto blocked her without much trouble. She attacked with more strength, with the same result. That frustrated her. She tried a kick, but the blonde evaded. This had gone on for several minutes until the pinkette started to tire. Her movement became more and more sluggish. This was when her opponent went on offensive. The fight was over in moments, with the kunoichi down on the ground. "Winner Naruto," the masked man announced. "Your performance was pretty pathetic overall." "How dare you," Fugaku growled. Sasuke scowled. Sakura looked sheepish. Naruto watched him attentively. "Sakura, you know the standard academy taijutsu well, but you have little strength and stamina. Naruto, your forms are a mess. You can't count on outlasting every opponent. They would kill you before you have the chance to do so. Sasuke. You might be the best in terms of ability, but you let your pride rule you. That is exactly the kind of thing that would get you and your team killed. He made a pause to let his words sink. Next thing we'll be practicing your teamwork. He took a bell from his pouch and fastened it to his belt. Well, you know the drill. You have 5 minutes to form a strategy. Then begin. He shunshined away and covertly watched what his team would do. So how do we do it, Sasuke-kun? Sakura sucked up to her crush. You just don't get in the way, the Uchiha suggested. She looked like he just slapped her. That's right, Fugaku agreed. You're just a clanless excuse for a kunoichi. Hey, we're supposed to be practicing teamwork, Naruto reminded them. Fine, the dark-haired boy scoffed. Sakura can be bait then. It took nearly 2 minutes of insults before they got to actually discussing strategy. What they agreed on in the end was half-baked at best. It started with Naruto's horde of Kage Bunshin attempting to herd Kakashi to where Sasuke and Sakura prepared traps where the Uchiha would try to force the Junin into an unfavorable position from where the girl would snatch the bell. It failed right at the beginning. The silver-haired man outright refused to be herded anywhere, instead performing Kawarimi with Naruto's clones, making them hit each other. Even when the blonde caught up on his trick, he couldn't make the older man go the direction he wanted him to. Sasuke came out of hiding to fight the Junin without the aid of pre-prepared traps and failed promptly. Sakura didn't even come close to Kakashi. Needless to say, they didn't even touch the bell. Do I even have to tell you how you did, or can you figure out for yourselves? He said sternly. Not well, Obito commented. The rest of his clan looked disappointed. The 3 genin stared at the ground. Well, it's late now, so you have an hour for a lunch break. In the afternoon, we'll go for a mission. Yay! Mission. Naruto rejoiced. Even Sakura perked up and Sasuke was interested. Kakashi allowed himself a small smile. He wondered how long would their enthusiasm last once they knew the joy of D ranks. Kakashi was currently wondering whatever had possessed him to pass this team. How did he ever mistake whatever they did during the bell test for teamwork? It sure looked that way, but it must have been something else. What they were doing now had nothing in common with any kind of cooperation. After the disaster that was the morning training, he decided to take his team on a mission. They got a simple D rank. What else? To paint a fence. What could possibly go wrong with it? A lot of things, obviously. First came the moment the mission objective was announced to them. They were obviously under some delusion that they would be sent on a higher-ranking mission right out of the academy. When Naruto heard what they were supposed to do, he shouted, "What?" at the top of his lungs. Did he think it was beneath him? He actually thought, I'm going to ruin my best jumpsuit, but his sensei had no way of knowing that. Sakura shouted, "Shut up, Baka," and punched him over the head, which made the foxy boy make puppy eyes on her, but she herself looked scandalized. Sasuke only brooded a bit more intensively than usual. When they reached the site, they found out that the client wanted his fence painted a horrendous shade of yellowish green, that clashed horribly with Sakura's dress, so she nearly refused to come anywhere near it. Naruto declared that the color was great, dipping his brush in the bucket and starting painting enthusiastically, sending little droplets of the paint flying towards his teammates. Kakashi suspected he did it on purpose. Sakura punched him for it, making him lose hold on his brush. The tool flew through the air, hitting the lower hem of her dress. An irregular green splotch appeared just below the white circle adorning the red garment. She stared at it in horror. One would have thought that she had no other clothes. Naruto, she screeched. That was my best dress. Why did you take it on a mission then? He thought, but what he said was, sorry, Sakura-chan. The blonde looked sheepish. It had no effect on the enraged harpy. She pummeled him to the ground, pounding on him, trying to beat him within an inch of his life. They tipped the bucket in the process, splashing the both of them with liberal amount of the paint. They had to buy a new one, lest they didn't have enough paint for the fence. Sakura whined that she had to go home and change her clothes, because she couldn't walk around the town in her current ones, but Kakashi forbade it, saying how on long missions you couldn't go home and change your dress, you had to do with whatever you had. Oh, and it was a punishment for fighting. Sakura claimed it was all Naruto's fault, but the Junin disagreed. And he explained her in no uncertain manner he was the one in charge here when she tried to argue. So they went around the town still dripping wet paint, Naruto displaying it proudly like the latest fashion, Sakura trying to become invisible. Unsuccessfully. Her experience in genjutsu didn't reach that far. Why don't you use henge, Sakura-chan, the blonde suggested. Baka, she shouted and moved to punch him before realizing it was actually a good idea. Still, it was humiliating to take advice from the class dobi, but the thought of meeting somebody she knew like that, namely Ino, made her swallow her pride. A couple of hand seals later none of the spots could be seen. They bought the bucket of paint without further incident and headed back to the fence. By that time Sakura was breathing heavily. The morning training had winded her and it was now painfully obvious that she had the lowest stamina out of the team. Yet she refused to drop the technique, for what would she do if somebody she knew passed by? Kakashi had to order her to quit it before she fainted with chakra exhaustion. By that time Sakura was too tired to stand upright and all the work fell to her teammates. With the delay they made due to the fight, it became dubious whether they could finish the job in time. Naruto wanted to use Kage Bunshin, but their sensei forbade him, claiming he needed to learn to work on his own and not over-relaying on one technique. The boy pouted, but started working with gusto. Sasuke merely grunted, picked his brush and methodically put the paint on the fence. Sakura cooed at how amazing it was. Naruto took that as a challenge and started painting furiously, trying to make Sakura admit he was doing it better. Sasuke, who couldn't allow himself to be bested by anyone, painted faster as well. Thanks to their competition, they managed to finish the mission in time, though barely. There was green paint everywhere, ground, plants and the team. Nobody was spared. They headed to the Hokage Tower to report success. Sakura didn't have enough chakra to perform a henge anymore, so everybody could see her in her red and green glory. Sakura's face was as crimson as her dress. They picked up their mission pay, just enough to cover the cost for the extra paint, and Kakashi called it the day. The three genin ran to their homes as fast as they could. Even Sakura didn't have the energy to pursue Sasuke. The Junin sighed. Yes, no sense of teamwork at all. And because he had passed them, it now fell upon him to instill it in their thick heads. He wasn't looking forward to it. Chapter 7 AN. Finally another chapter, next one should come soon. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, through the eyes of death. When Kakashi failed to show up before 8:15 the next day, Naruto came to the conclusion that he was going to be hours late again. He got up from his spot and started walking to the other end of the training grounds. Where are you going, Baka? Sakura scolded him. Sensei might be here anytime. Naruto shot her a dubious glance. Do you seriously believe that? Besides, I'm not going anywhere far away, I'll be just over there. I figured if we have to be here several hours earlier than him every day, I could as well get some training in. And I don't want to be so close to Sasuke's dead family, he added mentally. They're driving me crazy. You'll be tired when he comes, the kunoichi replied. I know my limits, thank you very much, Sakura. But you should work on them, unless you enjoy lying on the ground completely exhausted like yesterday, he advised. Naruto, she shouted. Kill him, inner Sakura suggested. What? He raised an eyebrow. Are you going to accuse me of taking my career seriously, unlike a certain somebody we both know? Don't insult Sasuke-kun. The pinkette looked scandalized. How dare he? He's so going to die. Her alter ego supplied her opinion. I wasn't speaking of him, Sakura-chan. He left the pink-haired girl to puzzle out for herself who he was talking about and started training. He wasn't practicing any jutsu, only the basic strength, speed and endurance-enhancing routines. He was still at it when Kakashi decided to grace them with his presence. The Junin appeared startled for an instant. That's strange, the silver-haired man commented. He looked between his three genin and then focused on Sakura and Sasuke. Are you too sure you are the rookie of the year and the smartest kunoichi? How dare you? Fugaku shouted. Sasuke's permanent scowl deepened. What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked befuddled. It's just that the supposed class idiot is behaving smarter than you, he clarified. Don't insult my son, you trash. The dead clan head looked ready to murder him. Sakura looked puzzled. Sasuke huffed. Even if he trains he's still a dobi. And he would be tired for the real training, the kunoichi added. A good ninja shouldn't tire so easily, Sakura, Kakashi corrected her. And Sasuke, don't badmouth your teammate. If you are true ninja and not just some punks playing at being shinobi, you should be training with him. My son isn't a punk, you thief, he's an avenger. Anyway, Kakashi continued unfazed, now everybody is present, we can begin training. You forg OT an excuse, Obito reminded him, but it fell on deaf ears. Sasuke, Sakura, run 100 laps around the training grounds to warm up. Naruto, we'll be working on straightening the mess you call taijutsu. Why doesn't he have to run? The Pinkette asked scandalized. Why is he getting special treatment? The last Uchiha was scandalized as well. Special treatment should be reserved for him. He needed it. He was an avenger. Couldn't Kakashi see it? Because he was clever enough to warm up before training, the Junin explained. And you two shouldn't waste any more time. He's still a dobi, Sasuke scoffed before running off. Teme, Naruto shouted after his retreating back. Baka, yelled Sakura before chasing after her Sasuke-kun. Naruto found the private lesson with Kakashi very educational. The academy instructors had never shown him so much in so little time. Then Sasuke and Sakura finished running and it was time for team spars. Sasuke tried to pound Naruto into the ground again, but the blonde was holding his own better than yesterday. In the end he lost anyway. Sakura then predictably barely touched both of her teammates. Then followed the dreaded teamwork exercise. Their new strategy was slightly better than their last one, but they failed to obtain the bell anyway. In the afternoon they took another D-rank mission. It thankfully included no paint and they fared better than yesterday. The next day Naruto didn't even wait if Kakashi would come in time and started training right off the bat. After a round of warm-ups he created several clones and took taijutsu spars against them. Sasuke decided it was a good idea and wandered to the opposite side of the training grounds and practiced his taijutsu kata. Sakura cooed on him and prattled about his awesomeness. The last Uchiha ignored her pointedly. When their tardy sensei finally arrived, he sent only the kunoichi running, much to her horror. He had the boys spar against each other and then corrected the mistakes in their forms. As soon as the Pinkette finished, he made her spar against her teammates. She was barely able to move due to exhaustion, so the fights ended almost before they began. The third day Sakura finally caught on and even she started training, though she made sure she looked good for Sasuke. Kakashi didn't send any of them running, instead working with them right from the beginning. Naruto wasn't sure, but it looked like the man was smiling behind his mask. In the following weeks, they fell into a routine. In the early mornings the three genin trained individually, practicing strength, speed, kata, chakra control or ninjutsu, depending on whatever they felt they needed. Then Kakashi came and they were sparring, practicing teamwork, polishing their forms and sometimes even learning new moves. Afternoons were reserved for D-rank missions. After 3 weeks they managed to touch the bell for the first time and 4 days later Sasuke actually snatched it. You're wonderful, Sasuke-kun. Sakura cheered. We did it, Naruto laughed. Even Sasuke cracked a smile. As expected from my son, Fugaku said. Good work, Sasuke, Makoto smiled. Good job everyone, Obito congratulated them. You're getting better, kids, Kakashi smiled, but don't think you're good already. Uchihas are elite, Fugaku pointed out. Stuffed up prick, Obito stuck his tongue at him. The clan head scowled, which had no effect on the outcast. But you're now good enough to learn some of the more advanced stuff. Tomorrow I'll teach every one of you a jutsu, he promised. Yay! Naruto punched the air. Sakura laughed and even Sasuke actually smiled. Kakashi was worried about his team. It was true that they improved greatly. Sakura's stamina and chakra reserves grew, though she was still far behind her teammates. Naruto's taijutsu improved dramatically. During his numerous spars with his Kage Bunshin he realized he retained some of his clone's memories. He then used it to test various moves. It dramatically shortened the time needed to get the right form. The muscle memory he had to train with his real body. Sasuke's abilities improved as well, though it wasn't as dramatic as with his teammates. That was something that angered him to no end, so he started secretly practicing another jutsu from his clan's repertoire during the evenings. He wasn't finished yet. But this was where the positives ended. Even though they finally took their careers seriously, even though their teamwork had improved with every drill and every mission, they were only going through the motions. There were no real bonds forming between his students. In every session, Sasuke would try to beat Naruto into a bloody pulp without fail. The blonde looked like he didn't mind, but Kakashi could only wonder how long was that going to last. Nobody could take such abuse indefinitely without effect, and the silver-haired man could only wonder when he would finally snap. He was sure that when it happened, it wouldn't be pretty. That brought him to the next matter on his mind. What was he supposed to teach them? Nothing too destructive, that was one matter he was certain about. The boys were prone to use it against each other, and he didn't want them to cause any permanent damage. Sakura was easy. The girl still had low stamina, but very good chakra control, so it would be a genjutsu for her. He wasn't an expert on those, but he knew several useful ones. He didn't have to think long to decide on which would be the best for her. Then he thought about Naruto. The blonde already had one powerful technique in his repertoire, the Kage Bunshin. He needed something he could use in conclusion with it, some short-range melee jutsu that could be activated quickly. Too bad he didn't know what his elemental affinity was. It would have narrowed his search considerably. Well, he'd get to it later. Then there was Sasuke. Not only he couldn't give him anything too destructive, he had to show him something powerful enough to catch his interest. If the last Uchiha thought he was being overlooked, it would destroy what little team dynamics they had. Once again he mused on whatever had possessed him to pass this particular team. If they won't improve soon, he would have to do something drastic. Like taking them on a mission somewhere far away and forgetting them there. He sighed wistfully. Too bad he wouldn't get away with something like that. He shook his head. He had no time for idle musings. He had a job to do. He got back to considering what jutsu he should teach the boys. The next morning Team 7 awaited Kakashi's arrival eagerly. They were all training diligently, but only half of their minds were in it. Because their sensei had promised to teach them a jutsu, Naruto was refining his chakra control. He had first heard about tree walking a long time ago, but it took him nearly as long to figure it out. The first few exploding trees had deterred him from trying again for quite a while. But now he was walking up and down the trees with little trouble. He only made sure none of his teammates could see him. He even positioned clones as lookouts. That brought his mind to a less cheerful topic, namely his team. His attempts to improve their relationships had ended in vain, usually before they could begin in earnest. He still didn't find an opportunity to talk to the dead Uchiha clan. Sasuke was trying to kill him every spar, obviously enraged that the Dobi was improving faster than him, even if he was still below his level of proficiency. Sakura at least was beginning to resemble a kunoichi. That made her less likely to die on their first mission, which made him glad. Worse was that she didn't warm up to him one bit, hating him for making her Sasuke-kun unhappy. He had tried to initiate some team bonding activities with her, but she was always chasing after Sasuke. He considered it a success when she didn't punch him. That said a lot about how screwed their team was. He sighed. He would have to do something soon, but no matter how hard he racked his brain, he couldn't come up with anything that might actually work. Then finally Kakashi-sensei appeared. The three genin ran to him eagerly. "Sorry I'm late. An old lady needed my help carrying her bags home and she kept forgetting when she was living. We have walked through all of Konoha before she remembered." "That's my line," Obito screamed at the top of his lungs. "Disgraceful." Fugaku sneered and Makoto nodded in agreement. It was the comfortable routine of every morning. "So now everybody's here, we can begin." He withdrew 3 scrolls from his pouch and threw each of them to one genin. "Read them thoroughly and ask me if there is something you cannot understand." Then he sat down and buried his nose in Icha-Icha Paradise. That was another thing that never changed. "Get a girl finally," Obito advised, but just as every other time it was unheeded. Naruto sighed and opened his scroll. He read the name at the top. Teoshi no Jutsu, the pushing hand. It didn't sound like much, but he wasn't one to judge a book by its cover. He unrolled the scroll and started reading. He had to admit that this technique really sounded interesting. It gathered chakra into one's palm and then pushed it forward in a strong pulse. It could be used to enhance the damage done with punches. When used properly, it could give the illusion that the user was much physically stronger than he really was. There was a warning that it took up a lot of chakra, but that wasn't a problem for him. What was worse, it required good control to do any damage, otherwise it was only a huge waste of energy. Well, he'll just have to train a lot. Sakura studied her scroll intently. Yochi Rinban, the world's turn, the name tag said. A genjutsu, she was always good with those. This genjutsu makes the target see everything at a different angle, as if he was facing another direction than he really is. A skilled user of this technique can control the angle of the shift. The user must be careful not to make the change too big, otherwise the illusion would be easily recognized, because it cannot make the target see something outside his field of vision. If cast while the target is moving, he might not notice he's under the technique. This is quite a limitation on its usefulness, thought the kunoichi, but it is still useful to confuse the enemy. She proceeded to study the details. Sasuke opened his scroll with impatience. Finally he was going to learn something powerful. A step closer towards avenging his clan, he opened the scroll and read. Kaiten. Ryuka no Jutsu. Dragon Fire Technique. This jutsu uses wires to guide a torrent of flames alongside them. If the user manages to bind the target with ninja wire, this attack is deadly. Deadly? Sasuke liked that. Fugaku was reading over his son's shoulder. The nerve of him, he scoffed. Doesn't he know Kaiten Jutsu or the Uchiha's domain? We have a library full of them, and this one as well. True, my dear, Makoto added. A thought suddenly entered Sasuke's mind. Didn't he see this jutsu scroll before? He wasn't sure, but he couldn't rule it out. There were many scrolls in his clan's library. He didn't remember what they all were about. He'd have to check it out. Any questions? Kakashi asked after all three genin read through their respective scrolls. Sakura had some technical question and the Junin answered it to the best of his knowledge. If there's nothing else, let's practice. The next day Sasuke appeared in a foul mood. He had searched his family library and it didn't take him long to find the scroll with Ryuka no Jutsu there. He wasn't pleased that Kakashi gave him a scroll he already owned. But he had to admit that the one-eyed Junin couldn't possibly know what jutsu the Uchiha clan possessed. But fire techniques were their specialty. He should have known it. Everybody should know it. He didn't say anything. He had to admit Kakashi was trying. He was going to give him the chance. The training progressed much like it did before. The individual abilities of Team 7 improved and they were integrated into their teamwork. Kakashi tested it again with the bell. He now had to actually pay attention to the three genin now. Otherwise there was nothing to be proud of. Naruto tried addressing Fugaku once, but the dead clan head got offended and shouted at him. His teammates were looking at him strangely, much to the delight of Obito. Kakashi's deceased teammate was snickering at him about talking to ghosts for days after the incident. Naruto decided to put off further attempts until a better opportunity arose. Unfortunately, he had no idea how said better opportunity should look like. The bond among the genin weren't strengthening as well. Sakura didn't lash at Naruto so often, but otherwise she didn't warm to him a bit. Sasuke brooded as ever. Sakura still worshipped the ground he walked on, but didn't do it 24/7 anymore. Her training was slowly shaping her into a competent kunoichi and her confidence rose, though only a little. Kakashi frowned behind his orange book. He was worrying about his team too much. He couldn't even enjoy Icha Paradise properly anymore. That simply wasn't tolerable. He had to do something about it. But what? Take them on a C rank. A boring mission would accomplish nothing. And should they encounter an enemy, how? Would his genin react? Would they be the well-oiled machine they were during training, or would they fall apart entirely? There was only one way how to find out, but the silver-haired Junin was reluctant to pursue it. What if the answer was no? Would he be able to face the consequences? No matter how much the brats grated on his nerves, he didn't want either of them to die, so what should he do? He procrastinated. He didn't have to decide now. He could hope that the matter would resolve itself. But that would take a miracle. Kakashi didn't believe in them, but he tried to hope anyway. Chapter 8 AN. So here comes another chapter. Finally, what so many readers have been waiting for. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, Through the Eyes of Death. The forest was ominously silent. Even the wildlife was quiet, feeling the presence of shinobi sneaking around. What's the distance to the target? The voice was so quiet that it barely carried over the hustling of the leaves in the mild breeze. 5 meters. A whispered response came. I'm ready anytime. So am I. Me too. 3 equally quiet voices signaled the team's readiness. The squad leader nodded silently. Okay. Go. 3 trained killers sprung into action. The target registered the slight rustle of dry grass under one of the attacker's sandals. He sprang forward. He ran into a tree. What was it doing there? He was convinced it was further to the right. He must have turned during his jump. It didn't matter. He climbed the trunk with haste. He noticed one of his pursuers climbing after him. He had to get out of there quickly. He spotted a convenient branch. He could use it to get on another tree. His hunters couldn't follow him. He jumped. Then, to his horror, he realized that the branch wasn't there. He shrieked, his limbs flailing wildly, trying to find purchase on anything. The ground was approaching rapidly. One of his attackers appeared below him. This was bad, but not hopeless yet. The attacker's arm shot forward, trying to grab him from the air. He slashed at it. He missed, only tearing through his sleeve. How? Then he suddenly felt a hand grab him. Got you. His captor shouted victoriously. The captive screeched. Poor kitty. Obito screamed. Sasuke was smiling victoriously, holding Tora by the scruff of its neck. Way to go, Sasuke-kun, Sakura squealed. As expected from my son, Fugaku commented. Good job, Sasuke, Makoto smiled. Then Tora squirmed furiously. Its claws swung dangerously close to Sasuke's eyes. The Uchiha screamed and threw it away reflexively. Run kitty. Obito cheered on it. Tora, freed from Sakura's genjutsu, took the advice and ran like its tail was on fire. Why did you drop it? Naruto shouted frustrated. That fleabag, Fugaku screamed, trying to gouge an Uchiha's eyes. My poor Sasuke, Makoto cooed. I'll get you. The last Uchiha screamed and took off after their prey. Naruto jumped from the tree and ran after him. Sakura followed. Kakashi took out his orange book. This was going to be one of those days, he just knew it. Sasuke sprinted after the escapee. It was far too fast to be just a cat, but he was a trained ninja. He had no trouble closing the distance between them. He was going to show that filthy blob of fur. How dare that dirty animal attack an Uchiha? Fugaku was always quick to offer his opinion. The dark-haired genin reached into his pouch for a shuriken with attached ninja wire. He threw it expertly. The projectile flew around the escaping cat, tying it into the wire. Got you. Sasuke smirked. Tora tried to wiggle free, but the wire held tight. That teaches it to attack an Uchiha. Fugaku's grin was positively evil. Well done, son, Makoto beamed. Poor kitty, Obito wailed. Have you ever heard about animal cruelty? Sasuke watched as Tora frantically struggled to get free. The prey is captured in the ninja wire, just like is required for the Ryuka no Jutsu. Sasuke imagined the vile creature being consumed by red-hot flames. So you got it? Naruto's voice interrupted his thoughts. He replied noncommittally. Was he really barely a moment ago thinking about murdering a cat? It was just a stupid animal. He tried to imagine Itachi in Tora's position. Now that was a much sweeter thought. The orange-clad genin picked the cat from the ground. Ah! He screamed. Tora took the first opportunity to sink its claws into his skin. But the blonde refused to let go. He squeezed it a bit harder. Stop this now, he commanded. Tora disobeyed. Or more likely it didn't even understand. Poor kitty. Obito scolded. Are you trying to squash it or what? Crush it, Fugaku suggested. Dobi, Sasuke smirked. Teme. Naruto replied. He wasn't speaking exclusively to Sasuke, but the only living Uchiha around didn't know it. Great work, Sasuke-kun, Sakura cooed as soon as she reached them. Good job team, Kakashi commended them, suddenly appearing next to them, not even raising his eyes from his book. Now go and report mission success. They headed for the Hokage Tower. The mission room wasn't too busy at this time of day. Most missions had been assigned earlier and only few shinobi came asking for them now. They reported the mission success and handed the still-fighting Tora to its owner. It wasn't a minute too soon. Not only Naruto's clothes got torn, But Obito kept snickering about his misfortune the whole time, and even the rest of the Uchiha clan wore quite pleased sneers while looking at him. It was slowly but surely driving him mad. They watched as Lady Shijimi squeezed the cat with all her might, prattling about how she had missed it, completely oblivious about the animal's obvious pain. Poor kitty. Obito wailed for the umpteenth time that day. They should execute her for torturing her pets. They should forbid her from ever owning an animal again. They should fine her until she has no money left. Serves it right. Trying to gauge an Uchiha's eyes, Fugaku sneered. Makoto looked torn. She liked cats, but she liked her baby more. Sasuke watched the spectacle with a satisfied smirk. That would teach the fleabag. The Hokage picked up a scroll marked D. The chores called D-rank missions are demeaning to an Uchiha. The former clan head shouted his outrage. He did it every time a D rank was assigned to them. My precious Sasuke can do better, his wife agreed. More D ranks, please, Obito squealed. I want to see your awesome Sasuke get dirty again. Maybe he'll get his face full of paint this time. Shut up, you traitor. Obito didn't even think of obeying. He suggested several more misfortunes that could befall the last scion of the once mighty and noble Uchiha clan. How dare you wish this on my baby? Makoto looked ready to attack him. Baby? Obito disagreed. A brat, a spoiled brat, that's what he is. Quiet, you disgrace. Fugaku snarled and launched himself at Obito, who was a tad bit slow to react. The two ghosts bore into each other, trying to tear their spiritual bodies apart. It was slow going, with neither of them possessing any substance. No, Naruto shouted. He couldn't watch it anymore. He felt himself getting nuts. The dead Uchiha paid him no attention. Their ghostly bodies were still locked in combat. The living people in the room were different. They were giving him none too friendly glares. Oh no, he had spoken aloud. What did he say that was so bad? He had interrupted the Hokage talking. What about? Probably assigning them another crappy mission. Naruto wasn't sure. The old man's voice was completely drowned out by the Uchiha's argument and subsequent fight. Now how to salvage the situation? He couldn't admit he was distracted by a bunch of angry ghosts shouting at each other and trying to rip each other's throats. But what else could he be complaining about? The mission. No, he shouted again. No, thank you, I want to do, a more incredible mission. Find us a better one. It was completely true. He wanted some change in his life. The current routine of Team 7 was threatening to rob him of his sanity, or what was still left of it. Sakura glared at him and looked like she wanted to hit him, but the presence of the Hokage stopped her. Kakashi sighed exasperatedly. Sasuke seemed to perk up a tiny bit. Yes, you old fart. Give my son a better mission, he can handle it. Fugaku seemed to really hate the Hokage. Naruto couldn't figure why. My baby can do it, you'll see, Makoto added in a proud mother tone. Yay. A C rank. A C rank. Obito danced and hopped around. Seeing the dead Uchiha agree on anything was simply unnatural. It freaked Naruto out. You idiot. Iruka sprang to his feet from his position beside the Hokage. You are just a rookie. Everyone starts off with the simple duties and works their way up. Geez, Iruka-sensei, thanks for the vote of confidence, Naruto grimaced. I would have thought that you finally got that I'm not really the class idiot. My son isn't just some rookie. The Uchiha clan head looked outraged. My Sasuke is good enough. Hey, we are awesome. But we keep getting the crappiest possible duties. Naruto protested. And if they aren't crappy, we make them so. Be quiet. Kakashi slammed Naruto on the head. The blonde rubbed the sore spot and sent a hurt glance towards his teacher. First Sakura and now you too. What am I, a punching bag? Serves you right, demon, Fugaku sneered. Why so harsh, Kakashi? Obito scolded. Don't you want to get out of Konoha as well? Naruto. Sarutobi shouted sternly. It seems I have to explain to you what those duties are about. I know it. The orange-clad genin protested, but he was ignored completely. Again. He had to suffer through the professor's boring lecture anyway. Do they all really think I'm that stupid? I have to admit, I didn't act like a genius today, but still. Serves you right, Dobi, Fugaku smirked. Not another lecture, Obito wailed. Naruto sighed. Retaining his sanity was becoming harder and harder with each passing day. Kakashi was thoughtful. He realized he might have been a bit too harsh on Naruto earlier, but he wasn't going to apologize. A teacher had to maintain his authority. He realized that going on a C-rank mission might not be a bad idea after all. He had considered it earlier, but always postponed asking for it, until Naruto did it for him. Going over their latest performance in the teamwork exercise, he admitted they might be able to handle a fight now. Finally the Hokage finished his speech. The dead Uchiha clansmen were making derogatory comments about the Hokage bothering their Sasuke with such elementary trivia, while Obito was trying to make the speech funny, but failing horribly. Naruto tried to tune them out, thinking about ramen flavors instead. That's why he missed when the Hokage stopped speaking. After the obligatory lesson about paying attention when the Hokage is speaking, much to the delight of the present ghosts, Naruto tried to tell them he wasn't the dobe everybody thought he was. He shouldn't have even bothered. He just got scolded again. But then he noticed the Hokage smiling. Okay. Sarutobi spoke. Everybody looked at him in disbelief. If you want it that much, I'll give you a C-rank mission. A break from their routine? Great. Naruto nearly started dancing. Finally you acknowledge my son's skills, Fugaku grumbled. You can do it, Sasuke, but be careful, Makoto smiled. We're going on a trip. Missions aren't trips, you disgrace. Naruto's earlier elation dissolved like snow in summer. He realized that the spirit Uchiha clan would be going with them. It's a protection of a certain individual, the Hokage continued. Why don't I like the sound of this? Who is it? He inquired. He tried to sound professional for a chance, despite his suspicion that it was a wasted effort. Yes. Who? Obito looked like a puppy with a bone. A princess? A daimyo? An actress? Disgrace. Shameful. Fugaku's sneer seemed to be permanently etched into his face. Will you come in here? The Hokage addressed somebody in the next room. The door slowly slid open. First a sake bottle appeared, then a tanned calloused hand holding it. What is this? A slurring voice asked. They're all a bunch of super brats. How dare you insult an Uchiha, filthy old drunkard. Take this. Kakashi, Obito snickered. You are an super brat. He saw through you in one, super brat, super brat. Their mysterious client entered the room whole. It was an elderly man with a wiry frame, who despite his age retained his health, and despite his drinking too. Especially, he slurred, the shortest one with the super stupid looking face. His eyes bore straight into Naruto. Are you really a ninja? Hey. Yes. Fugaku smirked mockingly. Are you really a ninja? There was only so many insults Naruto could take in one day. A kunai appeared in his hand within an instant and he sent it hurling in the direction of their client. The blade hit the bottle in his hand, shattering it, and embedded itself deep into the wall behind it. I'd say I am a ninja, he spoke in a, don't mess with me or else, tone. Naruto baka. Sakura smacked him over the head, don't kill our client. Trash, Fugaku commented. He doesn't know the first thing about proper behavior. He didn't specify who he was talking about. I wasn't aiming to kill, he replied. She scowled. Their client only stared at the remains of his booze supply, now slowly dripping on the floor. He shook off his shock quickly. He leaned forward, trying to look important and intimidating. His obviously inebriated state wasn't helping any. I am the super expert bridge builder Tazuna, he introduced himself. You look more like super expert sake drinker to me, Obito snickered. Who ever heard of you? Fugaku scoffed. I expect you to provide me super protection until I get to my country and complete the bridge. You hired an Uchiha. Of course we are goo. Dude, you picked the wrong team, Obito commented. Poor you. Next came the necessary briefing about where they were going and when were they leaving. Naruto listened with only one ear. His eyes were seemingly focused at an empty patch of air just behind Tazuna's shoulder. A ghost was standing there. A ghost the bridge builder brought. The man was only staring ahead, not saying anything. He didn't seem like the kind that would respond to him, but he looked like a new one to Naruto. The blonde couldn't be sure, but he usually could guess pretty well how long a spirit was dead. And if there was a fresh ghost following Tazuna, it probably meant there was something sinister going on. They will have to be extra careful. The first day of their mission passed uneventfully. That is if you don't count Kakashi being late, though only by a quarter an hour, Sakura screaming at him and the dead Uchiha clan running endless monologues about responsibility and traitors. The sun was shining on their way, the birds were singing sweetly, the flowers were blossoming and the wind was rustling in the leaves. It was such a beautiful day that even the constant derogatory comments of the deceased Uchiha clan couldn't ruin Naruto's mood. Tazuna's jibes were completely lost on him. The road they traveled on was rarely used and there were few inns near it and far between. They passed one during the afternoon, but Tazuna insisted it was still too early to retire and they walked until darkness fell. They built a camp in the middle of woods. Naruto was assigned the middle watch. Usually nobody wanted it, but he didn't mind. The opportunity he was waiting for finally came. He waited until Sakura, who had the first watch, fell soundly asleep. He created half a dozen cage bunshin and stationed them around the camp. Then he got up from his position and approached the sleeping Sasuke. More precisely his dead family. The ghosts scowled as he approached. "Don't bother the Uchiha, trash," Fugaku scowled. "I come in peace," Naruto replied. It sounded lame even to him. "Are you deaf?" Fugaku scowled. "I said don't come close. Please, listen to me." "No," Naruto sighed. This was going to be harder than he imagined. "I know you are suffering, but do you have to torture Sasuke as well?" Sneers were his only answer. "Aren't you his parents? Shouldn't you want him to be happy?" "What do you know about us, demon?" Fugaku hissed. "Happiness isn't the Uchiha way," Obito commented, his voice hollow. "Do you have to destroy what little family you have left? Surely they would have to see reason." "Go away, demon, or maybe not." "I can't," the blonde shook his head. "Not until you answer." "Go away, you vile creature," Makoto shrieked. "It's all your fault." "So you said before, and how exactly is it my fault?" "It's your fault. Some ghosts were extremely stubborn this way. So you insist on being difficult. Are you truly beyond reason?" "Don't insult us, demon." The glares they sent him now were positively icy. "If you still have the ability, think about the well-being of your son," he pleaded. "He will become strong," the clan head declared. "I didn't mean that." He said it a bit more loudly than he wanted. His patience was stretched thin. Sasuke stirred in his sleep. "How dare you disturb my son?" Fugaku bellowed. He launched himself at Naruto. His clansmen followed suit. Naruto soon felt the familiar cold seeping into his veins. He decided to call a retreat. There would be another night. He'll have to think more carefully about what he was going to say. It was a long time before the spirits of the Uchiha clan calmed enough for Naruto to return to the camp. There was still over an hour of his shift left, so he tried to talk to the other ghost he wanted to talk to, namely the one that was following Tazuna. But the man wasn't capable of holding a conversation. He mostly stared ahead, sometimes muttering something about being scared, the bridge and some gato. Naruto couldn't make any kind of sense of it, but one thing he knew for sure. There was more trouble ahead than they bargained for. Chapter 9 AN. Thanks to all my faithful readers and reviewers. Here comes next chapter. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, through the eyes of death. The next morning dawned bright and clear and the party embarked on their journey. Most of the day went very much like the previous one, bright, sunny and disrupted only by the occasional comment. Sakura asked Tazuna whether they had a hidden village in Wave Country and a lesson of geography followed. During the night Naruto tried to talk to the dead Uchiha again. They greeted him with their usual insults and sneers, but he ignored it. "What would bring you peace?" he asked. "Go away, demon. Die," some Uchiha the genin didn't know by name suggested. Makoto remained silent, looking sad. "Our clan must assume its rightful place," Fugaku answered. "Stuffed up pricks," Obito commented. "Kill the traitor," somebody said. "My poor baby," Makoto sighed and looked like she was going to cry. "Whose blood will ease your suffering?" "The traitor. That old geezer, that murderer, you, demon." The Jinchuriki sighed. The Uchiha seemed determined to be unhelpful. "Would the death of the person who killed you be enough?" "Yes." "No, all of them must die." "All of whom?" "Them." Naruto hung his head in exasperation. This seemed to be leading nowhere, but he wasn't giving up just yet. "Can you be reasonable?" he pleaded. This shouting is unbefitting of the noble Uchiha clan. What do you know about noble, trash? How dare you? We are superior. There's no doubt about it. You're a bunch of pompous asses. Obito shouted. You're a filthy traitor. Am not. The orange-clad genin exhaled deeply and counted to 10 in his head. It didn't seem he was going to get anywhere today. Can you please get back on topic? He asked. He was completely ignored. The Uchiha clan didn't stop their bickering until his watch ended, so he had to try again the third night. What binds you to this world? He inquired. Our blood. Our pain. Our vengeance. Typical. Ghosts usually answered this way. Emotionally, but with little information given. What does Sasuke mean to you? He's our avenger, my baby. He couldn't stop his brother. So they didn't know what they wanted themselves. Great. Why do you even bother with them? Obito asked. Why, indeed. Because they are tormenting my teammate, he answered. And he is tormenting you, the goggled Uchiha ghost pointed out. That's irrelevant, the blonde answered. We're still a team, no matter what kind of stuffed up ass he is. I had a stuffed up ass for a teammate as well, the goggled boy said. You did? Naruto looked at him in surprise. Of course, the ghost confirmed. The masked dude over there. Kakashi? Him? A stuffed up ass? The orange-clad genin couldn't believe his ears. Yes, him, Obito confirmed. I find it hard to believe. You should have met him when we were young, the spirit replied. He was such a stickler to the rules that it wasn't even funny. Always used to chew my ears off for showing up late. But he's the one who's always late, the Jinchuriki pointed out. He had a suspicion that Kakashi's deceased teammate was pulling his leg. A lot of things changed after. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Naruto knew very well what he was referring to. He decided to ask a question, which was very sensitive for every ghost. How did you die? Bad mission. Obito's eyes shot towards the Junin's sleeping form. What happened? The spirit sighed. He seemed reluctant to speak. Rock ninja, he whispered. Once again his eyes strayed towards his teammate. It was obvious that it wasn't the whole truth, but it didn't seem like he would get more answers tonight. Do you blame Kakashi? It was the wrong question to ask. Obito seemed to shrink into himself. Naruto sighed. This was going nowhere. But there were many nights ahead on their mission. He hoped he would have more success next time. In the afternoon of the fourth day, Naruto noticed a suspicious puddle ahead. If it wasn't for the fact that the road was dry and dusty, then the ghosts glaring at it would tip him off that there was something wrong with it. Naruto glanced at his teammates. They looked completely oblivious to the strange occurrence. Mist ninja like to hide in puddles. Naruto remembered what quite a few shinobi ghosts listed as their cause of death. There must be some hidden within the puddle, and the ghosts around are their victims. But now how to alert the team and not the enemy? He shook his water bottle. It made a splash. Kakashi-sensei, he started. Do you think there's a spring nearby? I'm running low on water. You should have restocked when we passed the creek, Baka. Sakura tongue lashed at him. At least she didn't punch him this time. Super brats, Tazuna muttered. But spring water is way better, the blonde genin objected. It's fresh and tasty. There must be one here. Why else would there be that puddle? What does it matter, Baka? Better watch the forest, Sakura suggested. You'd never notice anyone hiding there this way. The demon vessel sighed. He was trying to help her, and that was how she responded. Sasuke took a quick glance around. His hand slid closer to his weapon pouch. At least one of them, thought the boy. Now if Sakura got the hint too. They walked closer and closer to the suspicious body of water. Naruto could see more details now. There really were people hiding inside. 2 of them, to be precise. But how good were they? He had no idea. With each step his anxiety rose. Was he good enough to defend himself? Would they be able to protect their client? Was the ambush even meant for them? Who else? This road wasn't exactly frequented. He covertly slipped a kunai into his sleeve. It never hurt to be prepared. Not being prepared, on the other hand, was the epitaph of many a shinobi. He didn't want to join their ranks. They were numerous enough as it was. The puddle was now only a few steps away. He noticed movement within its depths. The attack would come anytime now. 3 steps. 2. 1. The blue-eyed youth walked around the puddle. tension evident in his movements. Why didn't anything happen yet? They passed the puddle and started walking away. Why wasn't anything happening? Was the ambush meant for somebody else after all? He noticed Sasuke relaxing. Maybe he should drop his guard as well? No, never drop your guard. Not for a fraction of a second. That's what all the ghosts agreed on. He heard a rustle behind him. He turned on his heel, kunai poised to strike. Two figures sprang from the puddle, a chain held between them was thrown and now wrapping itself around Kakashi-sensei, who looked utterly startled. Didn't the Junin notice anything? Naruto launched his kunai at the figure on the right. The ninja, whose Hite-8 identified him as a member of Kirigakure, batted it away with his armed gauntlet. The rope tightened, cutting the silver-haired man into pieces. But the orange-clad genin noticed something. Kakashi managed to pull a Kawarimi and was now hiding in the trees a bit behind the two attackers. I hope this is a strategy and not just Kakashi being lazy. Why are you hiding? There's a fight going on, shouted Obito scandalized. One down, one of the mist shinobi boasted. You wish, thought Naruto. He took out more kunai. By this time even his teammates noticed what was going on and turned around. Sasuke reacted quickly. He whipped out two shuriken and threw them at the approaching enemy. One of them was blocked, the other hit in the chest, but didn't manage penetrate the ninja's armor. That's right, Sasuke. Show them the might of the Uchiha. Kick the crap out of them. Dispose of them like the trash they are. The demon brothers prepared their chain for another throw. They were aiming at Naruto, who was the closest to them. Are they trying the same tactic twice? Did they honestly expect it to work? The genin quickly considered his options. If he tried to block the chain, it would just wrap around him. Dodging was better, but he still might get hit. Kawarimi sounded like the best choice. There even was a handy log lying not far behind the brothers. But on second thought, it was too handy. There might be a trap there. He didn't want to appear on an exploding tag. He had been thinking for too long. The chain was launched into the air. Naruto dropped to the ground, throwing his kunai at the chain, trying to alter its trajectory. His aim was a tiny bit off, but it was too much. The thrown blade only nicked the chain and both then continued on their previous paths. Another kunai sailed over his head. Sasuke helped him. His kunai struck the chain and pinned it to a nearby tree. The Kiri shinobi looked a bit surprised, but overcame it quickly. They disconnected the chain from their gauntlets and rushed forward to engage in a taijutsu battle. Naruto jumped to his feet. It was too late to reach for another kunai. He could only try his newest jutsu and hope it would work. He concentrated chakra to his right hand. He used as much of it as he could gather. Please let it work, he prayed. One of the brothers, the one with two horns on his Hite-8, was almost upon him. The Konoha genin punched, releasing the chakra upon contact. Or he tried to. In his haste he sent it forward too early. The wave of chakra slammed into the enemy, pushing him back. Naruto's fist soon followed, but the impact was weak. The mist ninja was merely knocked down instead of blown away. The youth hissed in pain. His hand hurt. The scroll warned that this would happen if he overloaded the technique. A hiss of metal slicing air brought him back to reality. The other attacker was almost upon him, swinging his gauntleted arm at his head. Naruto raised his arm to block, but he was knocked back anyway. The sharp edges of the gauntlet cut his skin. He took a moment to survey the battlefield. The shinobi with one horn on his Hite-8 was now turning to Sasuke. The last Uchiha looked ready for a taijutsu battle, but Naruto didn't give him high chances. Sakura stood in front of Tazuna, her hands locked in the last seal of her genjutsu, but he couldn't tell whether she managed to affect anyone. The two-horned brother was picking himself from the ground. The blue-eyed genin ignored the pain in his right hand and threw a handful of shuriken at the downed ninja. The demon brother managed to block some of them, but most went through. They couldn't pierce his armor, but one managed to embed itself in his unprotected thigh. Ah, so Sakura's genjutsu had worked. Unfortunately now it was broken. The one-horned shinobi attacked Sasuke. The Rookie of the Year managed to dodge the first strike, but couldn't launch a counter-attack. And the mist ninja was assaulting again. Just when Naruto was about to despair about their situation, Kakashi decided to re-enter the scene. Within a moment the Kiri shinobi were lying on the ground, bound by their own chain. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura squealed. You're alive. My son didn't need your help, Fugaku sneered. The fact that the statement was completely untrue didn't bother him the slightest. Sasuke just glared. Finally, Naruto muttered. So you decided to show your lazy butt finally, Kakashi. Obito scolded. What would sensei tell you? What if it was late again? We're saved, Tazuna sighed. Sorry I didn't act earlier and you got hurt, Naruto, Kakashi apologized. It's just a scratch, Kakashi-sensei. The genin brushed it off. The wound had already stopped bleeding. Their gauntlets were poisoned, the Junin explained. Crap, Naruto's eyes widened. He realized the masked man was right. He had heard about the various poisons from Water Country before. Why didn't he realize it earlier? He drew a kunai and stabbed it into the already closing wound. Blood flowed freely once again. Naruto, what are you doing? Sakura screeched. Getting the poison out, he explained. Duh. Isn't it obvious? Remained unsaid. You'll only hurt yourself worse. The girl pointed out. Let me see to that, I'll get some medicine. Just leave the monster alone, one of the dead Uchiha suggested. Do you know which O? He questioned. Have you any idea how to identify the poison? The kunoichi was taken aback. No, she admitted in a subdued tone. So you see, the orange-clad boy said. This is the surest way to get it out. Tazuna-san. Kakashi turned to their client. What is it? The elderly man replied. There was anxiety in his voice and it didn't seem to be only the after-effect of the scare he got during the attack. I need to talk to you. The most dreaded sentence in the world. Tiny drops of perspiration formed on the bridge builder's brow. These look like hidden mist chunins. The silver-haired Junin pointed at their two captives. These shinobi are known to continue fighting no matter what. The grizzled man was now sweating in earnest. How did you read our movements? The one-horned brother asked. Do you honestly expect us to tell you what you did wrong? Naruto shot him a glance usually reserved for the worst pupil in the class. We're your enemy, duh. Not your teachers. Yeah, you are so stupid, Obito snickered. It's not like it matters, Kakashi shrugged. They aren't going anywhere. The brothers glared daggers at him. On a sunny day. Like this, there shouldn't be a puddle. Naruto sighed. The one-eyed Junin sure was overconfident. And overconfidence was the downfall of many a shinobi. If you knew that, Tazuna asked, why did you let the brats fight? Who are you calling brat, you trash? The three genin scowled at him. If I had wanted to, I could have killed them instantly, the sensei replied, but there was something I wanted to find out. Who these two were after. Isn't it obvious? Naruto raised an eyebrow. They must have been after Tazuna. Nobody would send such a pair of incompetents after a trained ninja. Who are you calling incompetent, you twerp? One of the captives shouted. Who's the one tied up? The blonde genin retorted. Wait till I get my hands on you, the Kiri ninja growled. Not going to happen, the leaf genin answered with a bright smile. Why would they be after little old me? Tazuna laughed nervously. That's what you should explain. Kakashi's single eye bore into him. We haven't heard that there were shinobi after you. Our mission was simply to protect you from thieves or gangs. This has now become at least a B-rank mission. This was supposed to be a simple protection until you completed the bridge. If it was known that there were ninja after you, this mission would have been set as the more expensive B rank. I'm sure you had a reason, but it causes problems. When you lie about the mission, we are now operating outside our duties. Tazuna was staring at the ground, looking like a broken man. Sakura looked between them and the bound Kiri ninja. They were only chunin, yet they were so much stronger than them. The only thing she could do was to cast a genjutsu and she couldn't even tell whether it had any effect. Sasuke was amazing in his fight, but even through her rose-tinted glasses she could tell that he could have lost easily. If he was scratched by the poisoned claws like Naruto, and speaking of whom. We aren't ready for this mission, she said. She couldn't allow anything to happen to her Sasuke-kun, and if all it took was looking like a coward, then so be it. Let's quit. We will need medicine for Naruto's wound. We should get back in the village and get him to a doctor. It's nothing, Sakura, the boy in question interrupted her. It will heal in no time. Baka, she shouted. Don't you know anything about medicine? This won't heal in days. Your hand is going to be completely useless. If such wound had been inflicted on a normal human, this statement would have been true. But the demon vessel wasn't normal and he knew it. But his teammates didn't. So how should he explain that the injury had already almost healed without telling them his secret? We don't need the Dobi's left hand anyway, Sasuke scoffed derogatorily. He froze up with both hands anyway. Naruto had to inwardly thank him for the perfect distraction. I did not, he shouted back. The black-haired genin only snorted. The blonde was troubled. He didn't really freeze with fear, but he spent such a long time pondering the right strategy that he reacted too late. The result was the same. This was something that mustn't be repeated. An Uchiha can take care of everything himself, Fugaku agreed. Jerks, Obito commented. Kakashi said, this might be too much. An Uchiha can take on anything. So how did you end up like this? The outcast snickered. I guess we should return to the village to treat Naruto, the Junin decided. The boy in question knew he didn't need any treatment and he reckoned the masked man knew it as well. But it sounded like a good excuse why to turn back. But the question was, should they? I have to talk to you, Tazuna said in a grave voice. He immediately got the attention of everybody. Then he proceeded to explain the gruesome situation his country had found itself in. By the end of his tale, everybody was moved. Why should we care about some worthless peasants? Well, almost everybody. You really are a bunch of arrogant jerks, Obito screamed at them. You deserve to be dead. How dare you, traitor? You're the one who deserves to be dead. We cannot risk my son for the likes of him, Fugaku protested. He has to avenge us. Revenge? Revenge? Is that all you care about? Our deaths mustn't remain unpunished. Forget I ever asked, Obito sighed in exasperation. His clansmen were never going to change. Naruto was torn. On one hand he wished to help the suffering people, but on the other hand he realized he wouldn't be able to do much. So far they have faced only two mediocre Chunin and they weren't faring all too well. If it wasn't for Kakashi's interventions, they would have most likely lost. And a rich businessman like Gato had enough money to hire an army of Junin. If he did so, they would be screwed. They wouldn't be able to help the people of Wave Country any if they were dead. Sakura was just plain scared. She was nearly useless during the fight and even if Sasuke was great as ever, she feared it might not be enough. Her crush was brooding. As usual, here were his first real enemies, and Kakashi didn't let him finish them off by himself. No, he had to interfere. How was he supposed to get stronger if he had no chance to test himself against stronger opponents? Couldn't his sensei see it? He was definitely carrying on this mission. He was going to defeat anybody who stood in his way. It was another step on his journey to defeat Itachi. We're going on, he decided. That's dangerous, Makoto worried. An Uchiha isn't a coward, Fugaku pointed out. That's too dangerous, the silver-haired Junin objected. Tazuna retaliated with shameless emotional blackmail. Dude, that man is quite something, Obito stated with admiration. Even I wouldn't dare to pull something like that. Sensei would scold me into the next century. Surprisingly, Kakashi turned out to be extremely susceptible to those underhanded tactics. Or maybe he wanted to forge the bonds between his students in the heat of a battle. Either that or he hoped he would get rid of them permanently, so for whatever reason, they proceeded with the mission. Chapter 10 AN. The story moves another step. Read and enjoy. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, through the eyes of death. Naruto's watch that night was tense. The ghosts were mingling around, but he didn't try to talk to them. He didn't dare. The memories of today's attack and Tazuna's subsequent explanation were still fresh in his mind. He had to remain alert to detect any enemies, much more because he didn't expect them to be mere civilian highwaymen like he had thought the nights before, but experienced ninja. Maybe even Junin. A sudden rustle of leaves startled him. He straightened up, his eyes piercing the darkness, his ears strained to catch another sound of the late night's creature. It was only an owl. He calmed somewhat, but some of the tension remained. Why so jumpy today? Naruto jumped as the voice spoke next to his ear. It was all he could do not to shriek in terror and wake the whole camp. Obito. He scolded the newcomer. His heartbeat was slowly returning to its normal pace. Don't sneak up on me like that again, understood? Why not? The spirit grinned. You jump so nicely. It's not funny, the blonde scowled. It looked pretty funny from where I stood, the young Uchiha disagreed. You almost caused a false alarm. I did? The clan outcast raised his eyebrows, but the effect was a bit lost behind his goggles. You're the one who jumped 2 meters in the air. You startled me. A true ninja shouldn't let himself be surprised. Ghosts don't count, the orange-clad genin grumbled. I don't count. You're mean. Obito looked like he was going to cry. You don't make any sound when you walk and you don't have any chakra presence, Naruto explained. Good ninja don't make a sound as well, the dead Uchiha reminded him. His eyes gained a faraway quality, like he was remembering something. True, the blonde admitted. So would you please go now? I have to be on guard. Don't you like me anymore? Quit your whining. This isn't a time for it. Why not? There might be enemies around. Or have you already forgotten? Of course not. Obito looked scandalized. He also sounded completely insincere. You did forget about it, Naruto smirked victoriously. I didn't forget. The goggled boy defended his honor. I might not remember every detail, but I did not forget. The blonde shrugged. Whatever you say, but I guess you would appreciate if I recounted it for you. Well, that would be nice, Obito admitted. So the living genin started telling him. That sounds like you're in quite a lot of trouble, the ghost remarked when Naruto finished. No kidding, the blue-eyed youth agreed. I wonder what was. Kakashi thinking when he had us continue. We might be attacked anytime, and next time it won't be such a bunch of wimps. Are you scared? The dead Uchiha teased. I'm realistic, the still-alive Uzumaki corrected. I mean, what chance do we have against a team of Junin? One would occupy Kakashi and the others would massacre us in Tazuna. It almost makes me think that Kakashi wants to get rid of us. Not that I can blame him, he added silently. That's not true, the ghost defended his teammate hurriedly. I suppose you know him better than I. What makes you so sure? Kakashi wouldn't do that, Obito remained stubbornly. You know, Naruto observed, now you sound like you're trying to convince yourself. Kakashi wouldn't abandon his comrades. Those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. There was a hint of desperation in his voice. What did happen? Naruto inquired. What? Obito looked around. Did I miss something? What happened to you and Kakashi? Bad mission. The ghost stared at the ground. You said that before. What did go wrong with the mission? Everything. He turned his eyes to his old comrade. You aren't overly cooperative tonight. Come on, Naruto prodded. What was so terrible? The dead Uchiha didn't answer. He stood motionlessly and stared at his sleeping teammate. Did something happen to him? Or, do you blame him? Obito didn't answer. He turned around and ran. He refused to speak another word for the whole night. Naruto returned to his silent vigil. Underscore. 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 The voyage across the straits was tense, but uneventful. The mist had conveniently hidden them from prying eyes and they remained undetected even as they sailed along the unfinished bridge. They all were impressed by the sheer size of the construction. They landed in a fishing village without further incident and bid their goodbyes to the man who had steered their boat. The place was rundown. It was easy to see that the country had indeed fallen on hard times. Tazuna led them through a small forest towards his home. As they were walking near a lake, Naruto spotted a man hiding in the bushes. He was concealed expertly, the blonde had to admit. If it wasn't for his ability to see souls, he wouldn't have noticed anything. He shot a glance at Kakashi. The Junin was tense and alert, but he had been like that ever since they stepped on the soil of Nami no Kuni. There was no telling whether he detected the danger or not. The blonde genin covertly slipped a shuriken into his palm. In case his sensei had missed it, he had to alert him. When they came close enough, he flung the weapon. The throwing star sliced through the leaves of a nearby bush and embedded itself into the bark of a tree exactly where the unknown shinobi had been standing a moment before. He had escaped via a kawarimi. Instead of him a startled white rabbit shot out of the foliage. Just a bunny, Naruto grimaced. Stop trying to act cool. Sakura berated him. There was nothing there. The orange-clad genin paid her no mind. When the enemy ninja disappeared, he had to reappear somewhere. But where exactly? He strained his senses to locate him, but so far he had no luck. Stop acting like a moron, midget, Tazuna shouted. He was stressed out ever since the first attack and Naruto's sudden movement nearly gave him a coronary. He had to let out the tension somehow. Kakashi meanwhile looked thoughtfully at the rabbit. It was white despite being the end of spring. That was not natural for it. He knew that Naruto's instincts were right once again. There was an enemy nearby, but where? Naruto and Kakashi noticed him about the same time. Get down! The Junin commanded. Everybody obeyed immediately. Everybody except Tazuna. The man remained standing upright, frozen with fear. The one-eyed ninja tackled him to the ground. The giant sword thrown with the intention to cleave them in half flew over their heads. The blade then hit a nearby tree and embedded itself deep into the trunk. An imposing figure appeared standing on its hilt. Well, Kakashi spoke. If it isn't the hidden mist's missing nin Momochi Zabuza-kun. No, it isn't him, Naruto thought. He couldn't see the soul in the body, which meant it was just a clone. The real one was still hiding in. Naruto could see where. He also saw the ghosts following him. He was appalled at how many of them were children. It didn't ease his fears any. He had heard of Momochi Zabuza before. It wasn't much. But it sounded scary. They were in way over their heads. Why did they continue the mission again? They were likely to get slaughtered here. Everybody go back, the silver-haired Junin commanded. This one's on a whole other level. Against him, it would be a little tough. He reached for his headband. Unless I do this. And he lifted the Hite 8. I can see. Obito rejoiced, dancing around. Thief. Burn in hell. Various other members of the Uchiha clan expressed their opinions. You appear to be Sharingan Kakashi, Zabuza's clone spoke. Sorry, but the old man is mine. Sharingan. Sasuke glared at Kakashi. How can he have Sharingan? He isn't an Uchiha. Thieving scum, Fugaku spat. Surround and protect Tazuna-san, the masked Junin commanded. Do not enter the fight. That's teamwork here. The three genin obeyed. Naruto took the position that was facing the hiding place of the real Momochi Zabuza. Zabuza, first fight me. I already get to see the famous Sharingan, the clone of the Kiri Nukanen spoke. I am honored. It then launched into a lengthy monologue about Kakashi's reputation. He's buying time, Naruto realized. But what for? He kept his eyes on the real one and he didn't seem to be doing anything. Maybe somebody else is. It should have occurred to him earlier that the demon of the bloody mist might not be alone, but he couldn't see his suspected partner in crime anywhere. But that didn't mean there was no one there. Even he couldn't see the souls through too many solid objects. He covertly scanned the canopy, but so far no luck. Now, let's end the talking. Zabuza wrapped his speech. I have to kill the old man. Sasuke and Sakura immediately went on guard. Naruto didn't let it down first place, but even he tensed. But it seems, Kashi, I have to beat you first. The clone jumped into attack as soon as he finished speaking. He occupies Kakashi's attention and ours too, Naruto realized, and the real one is going to attack from a different direction. The clone landed on the surface of the lake. It formed seals with one hand and mist started forming around him. Before it obscured him completely, he spoke. Ninpo. Kirigakure no Jutsu. In the next moment he disappeared from their sights, completely vanishing into the white mist that had encompassed everything around. He'll come after me first, Kakashi said. I disagree, thought Naruto. Tazuna is his target. Once he kills him, he can get away and collect his pay. He doesn't have to fight you at all. Momochi Zabuza, as the member of Hidden Mist, he was an expert in silent killing. You don't even notice until you're already dead, so be careful, guys. And just what do you think we are doing? Having a picnic? The mist is getting thicker. I can't even see the real one anymore. He'll attack anytime now. As soon as he thought it, Zabuza's distorted voice sounded form. What felt like all around them? Naruto guessed it was another jutsu, meant to intimidate the enemy. It was working. 8 choices. Liver, lungs, spine, clavicle vein, neck vein, brain, kidneys, heart. Which one I should go after? The voice was mocking. The killer intent accompanying it was not. Sasuke was sweating profoundly. The oppressive aura in the air was getting to it. My poor baby, Makoto cooed. Fear is unbefitting of an Uchiha, Fugaku sneered, but it did nothing to Sasuke. He couldn't take it anymore. The feeling of having his life squeezed out of him, if he had to endure it any longer, it would drive him insane. Better to have it over with. His shaking hands slowly lifted his kunai. Sasuke. Naruto scolded him when he noticed what his teammate was doing. He felt like suffocating as well, but this wasn't the first time he had killer intent turned towards him, so he had built some tolerance against it. But even he was trembling now. Sasuke. Kakashi shouted, and that finally seemed to get through the haze the last Uchiha was in. Don't worry. I'll protect you guys even if it kills me. And it better kills you, thief, some dead Uchiha added. I don't let my comrades die, the silver-haired Junin added. You say that now? Obito screamed in rage. So he really blamed Kakashi for his death. Naruto absent-mindedly made a mental note that he'd have to ask him about it. We'll see about that. Zabuza's voice resounded from the mist. Naruto noticed a buildup of chakra behind him. Without thinking, he jumped and pushed Tazuna out of the way. It's over, spoke a clone of Zabuza that had materialized between the three genin. In the next moment it was tackled by a clone of Kakashi. The Bunshin of Zabuza turned into water, but another appeared behind the clone of the Leaf Junin. The Kakashi clone was cleaved in halves by Kabikari Haucho, before dissolving into water as well. Zabuza's clone looked a bit startled until Kakashi, the real one this time, placed a kunai at his neck. Don't move, he commanded. It's over. It's a clone, Naruto shouted. The copycat looked at him in surprise. In the next instant the real Zabuza appeared behind him. The clone dispersed. The silver-haired man barely dodged a vicious sword slash and tried to retaliate, but the Kiri swordsman didn't let him. He pressed on his attack with such viciousness that the famous copy ninja was hard-pressed to defend. After a while Kakashi was thrown into the lake. Suiru no jutsu, spoke Zabuza with a smirk. It couldn't be seen through the wraps on his face, but it was apparent in the satisfied tone of his voice. In the next moment the Konoha Junin was trapped within a huge sphere of water. Kakashi. Obito shouted desperately. Serves you right, thief. What will happen to Sasuke now? Zabuza started gloating. He was relishing in getting one over the famous copycat. We'll finish this later, he ended his speech. First I will take care of them. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Another clone rose from the water. It chuckled, and launched into a speech meant to torment them. Naruto had to agree with it that Sasuke and Sakura were merely acting like real ninja, but he had dealt with death before. He was dealing with it on daily basis. The clone activated the Kirigakure no Jutsu again. It had dispersed during the taijutsu exchange between the two Junin. The three genin and one bridge builder were trying to guess where the next attack would come from. It came in the form of a foot impacting with Naruto's stomach. The blonde had noticed slight movement in the mist, but he was too slow to do anything about it. The Junin was too far above him in terms of ability. He was sent flying, his Hite-8 falling from his head. Naruto. Sakura yelped. Just a brat, Zabuza sneered. The mist began slowly dispersing again. Take Tazuna and run. Kakashi shouted. You have no chance of beating him. As long as he's keeping me trapped, he can't move. And how far do you suppose we would get? Naruto grimaced. What will stop him from simply killing you and then running after us? We'd stand no chance as well. The water clone can't get very far from the real body. Just take Tazuna and run. Sorry, that's not an option, Naruto thought. But what is? He looked at the Mizu Bunshin. It was standing on his Hite-8, mocking him, daring him to try and take it. Behind it the real one stood on the surface on the lake, one hand holding the globe of water imprisoning Kakashi. That must cost him quite a lot of chakra, the blonde mused. I wonder how long he can keep it up. Maybe if we dragged it out until he ran out. Nah, he won't fall for it. He'd just kill Kakashi the moment he feels his chakra running low. We're lucky he likes to play with his victims, otherwise we were already dead. But we have to act quickly. But what can we do? We're just three genin against an elite Junin. If only Kakashi was free. Wait, there's an idea. Why does this Zabuza character hold the water prison with his hand? Would it disappear if he let go? That's worth a try. You think you can scare us with your talking? Shaw, you'll have to do much better than that. He formed a cross-shaped seal and called forth 2 dozens of cage bunshin. He sent them to charge at the Zabuza clone. While it was preoccupied destroying a swarm of orange-clad blondes, the real one ran over to Sasuke. I have a plan, but I need your help, he announced. Plan? You? The last Uchiha scoffed. It must be an idiotic plan coming from such idiot, Fugaku commented. Listen, we only have to make him let go of the water prison and release Kakashi-sensei. The rest would be up to him. He quickly outlined what he had devised. Sasuke didn't look convinced, but having no better plan himself, he reluctantly agreed. It was just about time. The Zabuza clone was toying around with 2 last Naruto clones. Kakashi once again shouted that they should run. Tazuna tried apologizing for getting them into the mess, but they weren't listening to him. They had a battle to fight. Zabuza's clone destroyed the last of Naruto's and the original. Launched into another lengthy demotivational speech, this time about how fearsome ninja he used to be when he was their age. Naruto let him speak. The longer he had to maintain the Suiru, the more chakra he wasted. Finally the lesson in history of the Bloody Mist was over and Zabuza clone sprang forward to kick around Sasuke. After 2 seconds, the Uchiha was lying on the ground. Zabuza's clone laying a foot on his stomach, the deceased clansman screaming bloody murder and calling all imaginable disasters on his head. The orange-clad genin swore internally. They had wasted too much time. He had to get Sasuke free or his plan wouldn't work and they would be done for. Having no solid strategy for such situation, he formed another bunch of shadow clones. He sent them to attack. He used a pattern that he had tried in training, but never used it in combat, including sparring. He had the clones form groups of 3, 2 of them would lift the third and throw him at the enemy. The airborne clone would then use the Teoshi no Jutsu to make his attack more deadly. Zabuza's clone looked unfazed by the attack. He unsheathed his giant Zanbato and started cleaving the clones in halves left and right. Out of the whole charge, only one got through, obscured from the Zabuza clone's sight by the smoke the other clones left behind when they dispersed. He crouched low and punched the water clone in the thigh. Then he released the chakra stored in his fist. For a human, it wouldn't have been a crippling blow, but it disrupted the flow of chakra keeping the Mizu Bunshin together. It soon dispersed into water. The freshly freed Sasuke scrambled to his feet. The plan, Naruto reminded him. The Uchiha nodded. The blonde created 20 more cage bunshin. They started running at the Kiri Nukanen. It didn't work against my clone, the swordsman taunted. What makes you think it will work against me? Then he noticed the Fuma shuriken flying towards him over the clones' heads. A distraction? That's better, but a shuriken won't work against me. He made a small step and the spinning weapon passed him harmlessly. Then he noticed the second one hiding in the first shuriken's shadow. Better but still not enough, he announced, jumping over it. He somehow managed to pull it off without letting go of the prison. He never noticed the first Fuma shuriken changing into the real Naruto. The genin's hands formed seals before he could touch the water. He landed with a splash. That was something the former member of the 7 swordsmen couldn't miss. He turned around, his eyes widening with surprise. He didn't have the time to do anything else. Naruto's jutsu was already activated. He intended to create a Mizu Bunshin under Zabuza's feet to throw him off balance and make him release Kakashi, but he had overloaded the technique badly. Also, he didn't think of forming a clone, but of making a wave or spear of water. The result was that a geyser erupted under the Nukanen's feet, throwing him into the air. His right arm lost its contact with the sphere enveloping Kakashi. The globe of water dissolved. The leaf Junin was finally free. Zabuza landed on the water and gripped his sword. He'd show that little Konoha brat. Naruto's eyes widened in fear. The huge blade was coming close too fast for him to dodge. In the last possible moment it was blocked by Kakashi. Now you have to fight me. And fight they did. Naruto, who quickly resumed his place beside Tazuna, could only stare at the skill and power exhibited by the 2 Junin. He had to commend Kakashi for the clever way he used his Sharingan to unsettle Zabuza. But as the fight progressed, he noticed something else. There was a person hidden in the trees nearby. He was positive they weren't there before. He would have spotted them otherwise. He contemplated telling Kakashi, but the Junin had probably detected them as well. And even if he didn't, he might only distract him at a crucial moment. The fight against the Kiri Junin was quite intense. Finally, with the last powerful jutsu, Kakashi had flung Zabuza against a tree. As the swordsman was lying there wounded, eyes wide with disbelief over his loss, Naruto noticed the mysterious person moving. The silver-haired man still showed no sign of noticing it. He walked up calmly to the downed Mist Nukenin, preparing to finish him off. "There's another one," the blonde genin shouted. Everybody looked at him in surprise. Everybody but Zabuza, who at the same moment was struck by a handful of senbon to his neck. He fell to the ground motionless, but he was still alive, that much Naruto could tell. "Hee, you're right, he's dead," spoke the enigmatic newcomer. It was a short fellow with his face covered by a mask. "No, he's not," Naruto disagreed. He had the sinking feeling that they were now looking at the suspected accomplice of Zabuza. Unfortunately, nobody else shared his opinion. Kakashi touched Zabuza's neck. "He's really dead," he confirmed. But the genin knew better. He could see the soul still firmly connected to the body. "He's not dead," he spoke again. "Shut up, Baka," Sakura scolded him. "If Kakashi-sensei says he's dead, then he's dead." The figure then thanked him for helping him kill Zabuza and introduced himself as Kiri's hunter Nin. Naruto only scowled. He didn't believe the guy a word. He made his opinion known. "He's lying." "Shut up," Sakura punched him. She needed an outlet for all the pent-up stress. The fake, as Naruto was convinced, hunter Nin jumped down from the tree and landed beside Zabuza. "I'll dispose of the body now," he announced, grabbing onto the fallen Nukenin. "Don't let him go," the blonde shouted, hurling a fistful of shuriken at them. But he was too late. The two disappeared in a swirl of leaves. "Damn it. They got away," he swore. "Naruto, language," Sakura scolded. "Why didn't you make sure he was dead?" The enraged genin turned to Kakashi. "I touched his neck," the Junin pointed out. "You should have slit it," Naruto replied. "Now he got away and he'll be back." The masked Junin didn't answer. He merely pulled his Hite-8 down over his Sharingan eye and fainted. "I can't see," Obito wailed. "Thrice damn it," the orange-clad boy swore. "The enemy is still around and now Kakashi-sensei is down." "Stop trying to make yourself look cool," Sakura berated him. "We all saw that Zabuza was dead." "I saw he was still alive," the whiskered boy opposed her. "Stop arguing," Sasuke interrupted. "You should be more concerned. What are we going to do now?" "Well done, my son. Show them that the Uchiha are natural leaders." "Yes," Tazuna said. "Super thanks for saving me. Now come and relax at my super grand house." Chapter 11 AN. Another chapter here. An event so many reviewers were asking for is about to happen. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, Through the Eyes of Death. Plus, 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 plus. How did you do it, Dobi? They were walking along the road leading to Tazuna's home. Sasuke and Sakura were guarding the grizzled man while Naruto and his clones carried the unconscious Kakashi. "What? How did you know the hunter Nin was there?" Sasuke elaborated. "I saw him," Naruto answered simply. He had no intention of explaining how exactly did he do it, and he wasn't a real hunter Nin. "Can you drop it finally?" Sakura scolded him exasperatedly. "Kakashi-sensei said he was a hunter Nin, so he was a hunter Nin. And that Zabuza guy is dead." "It's easier to believe it, isn't it?" the Jinchuriki replied. "Because if you admit he isn't dead, it means he'll be coming back." Sakura fell silent. The thought that they might have to face the Kiri Nukenin again sent cold shivers along her spine. "You think he'll be coming again?" Tazuna asked fearfully. "Possibly." "Kakashi-sensei said he was dead," the pink-haired Kunoichi repeated, but it was obvious she was trying to convince herself. Her complexion was unusually pale and little drops of perspiration formed on her brow. Naruto decided he had to calm her down. "Even if he isn't dead, he is wounded," he observed. "He would take some time to heal. I doubt they have a decent hospital around here." "Maybe he'll die," the girl offered hopefully. "Maybe," her short teammate shrugged. "Miracles sometimes happen. They merely tended to avoid him." "We're here," Tazuna interrupted. The three young ninjas ceased their bickering. The forest ended and they reached the seashore. There, on poles sunk deep into the bottom, stood the bridge builder's house. The elderly man opened the door without knocking and entered. Team 7 filed in after him. Their sudden arrival surprised a young dark-haired woman working at the kitchen table. "Father!" she exclaimed joyfully. "You're back." Then she noticed the inert form of Kakashi. "What happened to him?" she worried. "Is he wounded?" "He's exhausted," Naruto explained. "We were attacked on the way here." This caused Tazuna's daughter to startle. "Are you all right?" She turned to her father. "Yes, we are, Tsunami," he replied. "Is there a room I can put him down?" The orange-clad genin gestured to his sleeping burden. "He's quite heavy," Sasuke scoffed. "Oh, forgive me my rudeness," the woman apologized. "Put him to the guest room. It's over there." "Thank you," the blonde replied and carried his unconscious sensei away. As he was laying Kakashi down on the futon, he noticed he was being watched. A young child was peeking through a door, but he ran away the moment he noticed Naruto looking back. The genin didn't think much of it. He'd see the kid again soon enough. He returned to the kitchen. Tsunami was busy at the table, trying to prepare dinner for the unexpected guests. He noticed she had trouble putting together the necessary ingredients. Either they had come at a bad time, or there really was a shortage of supplies in Wave. The lunch was a bit awkward occasion. Tazuna was trying to brighten the mood up by retelling the story of their super journey and Team 7's super-heroic battles, but it wasn't working. Tsunami was obviously worried about him and hard-pressed to believe that a bunch of 3 kids can do anything about Gato. The fact that her father didn't sound entirely convinced of the tale he was spinning didn't help a bit. The young kid Naruto noticed earlier was watching them from a hiding spot behind the door, but didn't come out. Tsunami was shooting him worried glances occasionally, but didn't say anything. Once the meal was over, Tazuna declared he had to tell the workers they would be resuming the construction tomorrow. Naruto and Sasuke accompanied him while Sakura stayed behind to watch over Kakashi. It was a depressing journey. Most of the workers were tired, weary men on the verge of breaking. When they heard that Tazuna had brought shinobi for their protection, their eyes lit up, but once they saw the 2 genin, the hope was replaced with skepticism, much to the chagrin of Sasuke and his spiritual tagalongs. If the situation wasn't so dire, Naruto would have found it funny. Dinner was much like the lunch, a silent and tense affair. Tazuna called it an early night, claiming he had to be rested for tomorrow's construction. The 3 genin decided to retire early as well. The day had taken a lot out of them and they needed to be fresh early the next morning. But even in the relative safety they agreed to take shifts watching. Plus, 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 plus. It was Naruto's shift again. He spent the first part of it sitting beside the unconscious Kakashi, trying to talk to Obito, but the goggled Uchiha was still sulking and remained stubbornly silent. The blonde genin gave up after a while and tried wandering through the house instead. The floorboards creaked slightly under his feet and the sound echoed through the empty corridor ominously. It almost made the boy think that Zabuza had come back for them, but there was no intruder in the house. The genin sighed. This situation was making them all tense to the point of snapping. He prayed that Kakashi would wake up soon, otherwise there would be no guarantees on what might happen. The threat of another attack was hanging over their heads and he expected it to come crashing down of them any minute. He knew that the demon of the mist was down for the count for the time being, but his partner in crime was not. He might be busy tending to his wounded comrade now, but he would be coming back, of that Naruto had no doubts. He might fear Kakashi, but what if he found out the Junin was wounded as well? The blonde boy didn't know anything about his fighting abilities, but he had the sneaking suspicion that 3 genin would barely slow him down. Such was his distraction, that he didn't even notice a spirit lingering in the hallway until he walked right through him. Only the chilly feeling reaching deep into his bones woke him from his musings. He quickly berated himself. Wasn't he supposed to be keeping watch? If Zabuza's accomplice really came, they could have been all dead now. He took a breath to compose himself and slowly turned around. There stood a dark-haired man with a rope tied around his head and a cross-shaped scar marring his chin. An odd expression was etched on his face, like he couldn't decide between smiling and crying. "Hello," Naruto greeted hesitantly. "I didn't mean to walk through you." The ghost smiled slightly. "Hello," he answered. "I don't mind." The boy smiled back. It was always better when the ghosts retained their reason. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto," he introduced himself. "What's your name, sir?" "Kaiza." "Pleased to meet you," the genin smiled. "So, what are you doing here?" "Watching my son," Kaiza answered. "Do you mean the boy who is always hiding?" "Yes, that's my little Inari." Sadness laced the man's voice. It was obvious to Naruto that the child had a lot to do with the reason Kaiza's spirit lingered, but it would be unwise to ask him straight. Some ghosts took offense to such actions and refused to speak to him for a long time after that. Obito was one such example. "You must love him very much," he said instead. "That I do," the dead fisherman confirmed. "I'm sure he loves you too." "Yes." The ghost looked wistfully through the closest door. "He's hurting a lot, isn't he?" It wasn't really a question. "That he is." Inari's father's ghost hung his head sadly. "I'm sure he will get better," Naruto tried to reassure him. "I think if Gato wasn't here, he might be better already." "If Gato wasn't here, he wouldn't be like that," the spirit replied. "I saw the people in town," the young shinobi said with a sigh. "They sure are scared for their lives. Gato must have done horrible things to make them that way." "That he did," Kaiza confirmed. "He did something to you as well, didn't he?" Another question that wasn't really a question. "Yes." The spirit's face gained such a look of pain and terror that Naruto didn't dare to inquire about it anymore. He decided to steer the conversation to more pleasant topics. "This is a nice house you have here. It must have been great living here before." "Oh crap," he put his foot into his mouth again. "Tazuna's house is quite something, isn't it?" Kaiza replied with a fond smile. "It's quite a step up from the hut I grew up in. But that's what you would expect from an architect." "I guess so," Naruto shrugged. "I haven't lived in such a big house either." "Really?" The scarred man raised his eyebrows. "You seem quite well off to me, but what would I know? I'm just a simple fisherman." "I look well off." Now it was Naruto's turn to look surprised. "Now that's a first. Most people say I look like a ruffian." "Then they are a bunch of snobs." "Some of them certainly are," the genin replied, remembering some of the people he knew from Konoha. "Anyway, what are you doing here?" the fisherman inquired. "Me and my team were hired to protect Tazuna while he builds the bridge," the orange-clad genin explained. "That's great, we really need it, but aren't you kind of young?" After a whole half-day of hearing similar comments, Naruto's patience was nearing its end. Somehow, he managed to suppress the urge to shout about being the next Hokage. If he woke up the household, he would have some awkward explaining to do. "Our sensei is one of the best junin in Konoha," he replied instead. "That's good," Kaiza nodded, "but you must remember, Gato is ruthless. He won't stop before anything." "That's good to know, though we figured out as much ourselves," Naruto replied. "Trust me, kid, you don't know the half of it." Once again Kaiza's eyes became haunted. "What is it we don't know? It would certainly be useful to know." Remained unsaid. What he did to break this country's spirit. And how did he do it? That sounded like a key piece of intelligence. The spirit started shaking and hugging himself. "So much pain," he whispered, "too much pain." "Hey, mister, it's past," Naruto tried. "He can't hurt you anymore. Hurts too much." Kaiza kept on shaking. The genin sighed. He caused the ghost a fit. Great. And he had been such an informative one. Well, he'd have to try again tomorrow. The morning came and Kakashi still didn't wake up. Everybody gathered for breakfast, and that included Inari. Naruto could finally get a look at the elusive youngster. He could be 8 years old and he was dressed in clean, but worn out and patched clothes. Naruto couldn't see his face, it was hidden in the shadow of an overlarge hat. "Nice you joined us, Inari," Tsunami said with a smile. The child only grunted in response. "Hello," Naruto said, trying to sound cheerful. He got no reaction at all. He decided to leave the matters be for the time being and concentrate on his breakfast. They had a long day ahead of them. After they ate their meal in silence, Tazuna stood up. "I'm going to the bridge," he announced. Naruto and Sasuke fell in step behind him. Sakura stayed behind to watch over Kakashi. "You're going to die," Inari announced. Inari, Tsunami chastised him exasperatedly. Be polite to our guests. They're here to protect your grandfather. Why? They're going to die anyway. The youngster finally looked up and revealed his face. It would have been an unremarkable childish face if it wasn't for his large haunted eyes. Such a cheerful lad you are, Naruto muttered sarcastically. Would it kill you to smile once in a while? Inari scoffed. You don't know anything. You think you are big, strong ninja, but you are all going to die. Gato will kill you. Oh, he'd certainly try, the blonde replied, but it isn't so easy to kill us. Sasuke and Sakura nodded in agreement. You think so? Inari obviously didn't share their opinion. I know so, Naruto corrected with conviction he didn't truly feel. Then you're a fool, the child stated. No one can oppose Gato. It's hopeless. You're hopeless, Naruto corrected. What is your life worth if you give up? I live, the child replied. You're going to be dead. You don't know it, the orange-clad genin opposed him. I do know, Inari stood his ground. You think you are some kind of hero, but there are no heroes, the boy shouted. The pain in his voice made Naruto pause. Inari, that's enough, Tsunami chastised him. Apologize to our guests, they're trying to help. They're going to die, the boy shouted and ran out of the room. Please excuse my grandson, Tazuna said. He wasn't like this before his father died. Father, I told you not to speak about that man in front of Inari. The old bridge builder had the grace to look a bit ashamed. Naruto didn't like the tension in the air and decided to do something to diffuse it. Shouldn't we be going? He asked. Yes, we should, Tazuna agreed. If we hurry, we might finish the arch today. The trio left the house. As they were walking to the construction site, Naruto asked Tazuna what tragedy had befallen his family, and the architect told them the tragic story of Kaiza. No wonder the ghost didn't want to talk about it, Naruto thought. I can't even imagine what is something like that like. Even Sasuke looked mildly sick, which, considering his usually stoic face, meant a lot. Finally they arrived at the bridge. They had seen it before, through the mist, and thought it was huge. But even then they had misjudged the sheer size of the structure. Only now, in broad daylight, it was fully visible. It was even higher than they had originally thought, and its length seemed to go on and on forever. Tazuna walked on it and they traveled its length. The waves beneath them were dancing and splashing against the pillars. A solitary ghost was sitting near one of them, mumbling about a broken rope. They left the accident victim behind and marched forward until the coast of Wave Country turned into a thin bluish line on the horizon, and another faint line appeared in front of them. The shores of Fire Country. Soon they arrived at the end of the finished part and met with the workers already waiting for them. All right, men, Tazuna called without preamble, let's start working, and he proceeded to give orders to the men. The construction slowly commenced. It was painfully obvious that they were understaffed. The men, weakened by malnutrition, were struggling with beams and blocks too heavy for them, and they often had to stop to catch their breath. The work proceeded at a sluggish pace. Naruto was no expert, but it seemed to him like the construction would last for another year, and he had no intention of staying here that long. And judging from Sasuke's dark expression, the boy had come to a similar conclusion. Hey, Sasuke, the blonde genin started. The black-haired one acknowledged him, which coming from him was quite a lot. You can see anyone approaching from a mile away, so there's no need for the both of us to be on guard all the time, he pointed out. Do you want to slack off? His teammate inquired. No, the orange-clad boy shook his head. I want to help Tazuna. The sooner the bridge is finished, the sooner we can get out of here. Sasuke replied. Naruto wasn't completely sure, but it sounded like approval. Yes, go, Fugaku sneered. Maybe you'll be a better construction worker than Ninja. The Uzumaki paid him no mind and jogged over to Tazuna. Is something wrong? The bridge builder asked. No, the young shinobi assured him. I just thought that perhaps I might help. You seem to be short on staff here. Well, we can use a pair of hands here, the elderly man admitted. But, don't take me wrong, boy, but what can you do? You don't seem able to lift one of those beams. And I hired you as guards, not workers. Oh, I'm strong enough, Naruto replied, and besides, the sooner the bridge is finished, the sooner our mission is over. Gato won't have a reason to target you afterwards, so I'd be doing what I was hired for. If you see it that way, Tazuna shrugged, you're welcome to try. And he gestured to a steel beam lying nearby. Naruto walked over to it and picked it up. It was heavier than he thought and he had to use chakra to reinforce his muscles, but he managed it nevertheless. The old bridge builder was deeply impressed. Well, I'll be damned, he said, scratching his scalp. You actually did it. Yes, and now where should I put it? You know, it's kind of heavy. Over there, the architect pointed and the genin obeyed his command. So what I should do now? I can do a lot of work. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Carrot, 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 carrot. In the evening Naruto felt completely drained, but everybody was in good spirits. Only Inari was off sulking somewhere. Thanks to the swarm of Naruto's clones, the construction moved forward faster than they had dared to hope. Tazuna said that this way they'd finish the work soon, omitting to say what soon meant. The only damper on their mood was the fact that Kakashi was still out of it, but according to Sakura he looked now merely fast asleep, not deep unconscious anymore. Despite his exhaustion, Naruto couldn't fall asleep the night he wandered the hallways aimlessly. He encountered the spirit of Kaiza again. I heard about what Gato did, he said. I'm so going to get rid of him. Thank you, the ghost responded with a smile. This country needs a hero. He turned away and continued watching over the sleeping Inari. Naruto wandered some more until he walked into Kakashi's room. There was only the long-dead teammate watching over the sleeping Junin. Hello, he greeted. Hello, Obito responded. So the ghost was talking to him again. That was good. How is he? He asked, looking at Kakashi. Still asleep. Slacker. The Uchiha outcast couldn't help but voice his opinion. He was in a battle, Naruto pointed out. He deserves his rest. It's already over a day, Obito reminded him. Do you think that's too long? If it was me, I'd be already up and about, the Uchiha boasted. Naruto took another look at his sensei's masked face. He looks so peaceful, he observed. Though it's hard to tell with his mask on. Yes, the ghost agreed. I always wondered why he insists on wearing it all the time. So do you know how does he look underneath? He asked, turning back to Obito. No, he shook his head. But I always wondered. I tried to unmask him so many times, but I never succeeded. Did Sakura take a peek? Naruto inquired. No, Kakashi's deceased teammate sighed. That girl's such a stickler to rules it isn't even funny. That she is. You realize now it's an excellent opportunity? Naruto pointed out with a grin. Yes, Obito grinned back. So let's do it, the genin decided and turned back to his sensei. He found himself staring into his single eye that was wide open. Chapter 12 AN. Your prayers have been heard. I'm back with the next chapter of your favorite story. I hope to update more regularly, but I can't make any promises. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, through the eyes of death. Naruto froze. Oh no, he didn't just talk to a ghost in front of his sensei. What did Kakashi think, seeing him speak to thin air? And how much did he hear? And what should he do now? Tell the truth? No, he didn't even consider it. Telling the truth never did him much good. He had tried to tell somebody about his ability before, but it didn't go well. Well, didn't go well, was quite an understatement. Even now he shuddered when he remembered it. The orphanage courtyard was full of laughing, playing children. The older ones were running around in a game of tag. The younger ones were busy in the sandbox. All of them were happy. All but one. One small child was sitting in the furthest corner, hugging his knees, wide blue eyes fixated on something only he could see. And judging by the expression on his small face, it wasn't a pretty sight. Lunchtime. A woman's voice carried over the courtyard. All the children turned their heads towards her, abandoned whatever they were doing and raced to the dining room. All except one. The lone child huddling in the corner remained still, gazing fearfully at thin air. It's lunch, the matron repeated. Didn't you hear? Come in before there's nothing left for you. The boy's eyes shifted to her momentarily before returning to whatever they were watching before. The young woman sighed. She was new to the orphanage, new to Konoha as well, but she had already noticed that there was something strange with the blond boy with the strange whisker-like marks on his cheeks. She walked over to him and crouched down. "Hey, sweetie," she spoke softly. "It's lunch already. Come in or the others would leave nothing for you." The boy didn't move. "Come on," she prodded. "What's wrong with you? Are you ill?" "You're sitting in him," Naruto replied. "What?" She blinked in confusion. The comment made absolutely no sense. "You're sitting in him," Naruto repeated. "He doesn't like it." "Honey, there's nobody here." She put on her best motherly smile. "Just come on and eat your lunch." "I can't," he shook his head sadly. "He wouldn't let me." "Who?" she inquired. "He," Naruto repeated. "You're sitting in him, and he's really angry, can't you tell?" "No," she shook her head. "There's nobody here. And come on or there will be really nothing left for you." Although she was trying to hide the fact, her patience was slowly wearing down. She grabbed the boy by his arm and pulled him to his feet. "No," he protested loudly. "I can't go there. Stop this nonsense and come already," she commanded. "Your imaginary friend would be still here when you come back." "He's not my friend and he's not Gi, whatever," Naruto protested, trying to free his arm from the matron's grasp. The angry ghost that had backed him into the corner was grabbing at him, his fingers digging deep into his body, filling him with unnatural coldness. He shivered involuntarily. "Of course, little one," she said absent-mindedly, pulling him to his feet. "And now be a good boy and come to lunch." The ghost dug his claws deeper. Naruto screamed. "What's wrong with you?" the matron asked, her temper hanging on a few last threads of her worn-out patience. "He's wrong." The child pointed at the angry spirit. From the woman's perspective he was pointing at thin air. "He's hurting me." "I told you already there's no one here." The woman finally snapped. Children's games were all right, but only if they knew when to stop. "But there is," the blue-eyed boy insisted, "and there's more of them." "So now there are more." She sighed. "Well, whatever. Just forget your imaginary company and come in for the lunch." "But they are real. I can prove it," Naruto protested. "Oh," the woman replied, not really paying attention to her charge anymore. There was a big plate with her name on it weighing inside, and thanks to this troublemaker it was getting cold. "Then please do so." "Yes," the blonde exclaimed enthusiastically. Finally he'd get somebody he could talk to about them. The other children only laughed at him when he tried, but this woman was different. "There's one always following behind you. He looks young and has red hair and he looks really sad." The matron didn't plan on actually listening to whatever the kid came up with, but the description caught her attention against her will. Could it be? Nah. No way. It was just a coincidence. There was no way the runt could possibly know. But his next words struck her like icy claws tightening around her heart. "He always speaks about you. That you used to be so cheerful and not to blame yourself for what happened. Hideyoshi wasn't your fault. And just what would you know about what happened?" She shrieked with tears in her eyes. How dare this sorry little wretch bring up the incident which took away the two people most precious to her. "You know nothing about me. Nothing about us." Naruto tried to back off, suddenly scared, but she still had him in her grip. Speaking of which, her fingers were now digging into his flesh painfully. "Stop sprouting your nonsense and get inside already." Naruto was now crying and trembling in fear, but she didn't care. How dare that little urchin remind her? She had moved all the way from Port City to Konoha to escape her memories. She had almost forgotten it. Well, it now woke her from her sleep only every other night, and then he comes and speaks about it. What right did he have? And how did he know? There was no way he could know. There was only one possible explanation. This child was indeed cursed, just like all the villagers said. "Get inside," she growled, throwing the miserable little thing towards the door. "And don't you ever dare bring up your nonsense again." Naruto nodded between sobs. It didn't go as well as he imagined. The only nice lady in the orphanage was now angry at him. And she stayed being angry. She never had a kind word for him again. Instead treating him even worse than the others. So that was the reason telling Kakashi was completely out of the question. Living people didn't want to hear about their ghosts. He didn't want Kakashi to start hating him just like the lady, whose name he forgot, did. But what else should he do? What could he do? Before he could come up with an answer, the bedbound man spoke. "Naruto." The genin stiffened. "Who are you talking to?" "Nobody," the blonde replied hurriedly. "Who's nobody, you dolt?" Obito screamed into his ear. It took all of Naruto's self-control not to wince at the volume. Really? One silver eyebrow arched up, because it certainly sounded to me like you were talking to someone. And who would I be talking to? He retorted. Me? Me. Obito jumped up and down between them, completely invisible to one of them. Naruto wanted to hit him or yell at him, but couldn't. You tell me, the Junin inquired. I already told you I wasn't talking to anybody. Really? One silver eyebrow nearly disappeared under the Hite-8. Because talking to yourself is a sign of insanity, you know? I'm not insane, Naruto scowled. Aren't you? Obito raised an eyebrow in perfect imitation of Kakashi. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. He quickly tried to cover it up with a cough, but the Junin wasn't fooled. And just what's so funny here? He asked. Nothing. First talking to yourself, then chuckling to yourself. It doesn't look good for you, Naruto. What doesn't look good for me? The genin inquired. You know, ninja must pass minimum sanity requirements to be allowed in the field. What if somebody was to examine you now? Kakashi was speaking in light, joking tone, but high words cut Naruto deeply anyway. What if he really was kicked out of the shinobi forces? Don't worry, Obito tried to cheer him up. Kakashi passed and so did I. It utterly failed to reassure him. Hey, why are you so pale? The silver-haired man asked. Me? Naruto raised an eyebrow. Pale? Why would I be pale? That must be the lack of light here. Aren't you denying it a bit too much? No, the blonde shook his head. Why do you ask? I think you do. Kakashi's single visible eye bore into him. I don't, the genin protested. You do. You do, Obito pointed him. You do, the Junin echoed his dead teammate. To Naruto it sounded entirely too creepy. I don't, he shouted. So what were you doing then? Nothing. Were you perhaps practicing pickup lines for Sakura? The silver-haired man joked. What? The boy was shocked. I'm not a pervert like you, so what were you doing then? Talking to myself, Naruto huffed. Fine. If you say so, Kakashi shrugged. Bring me some water, I'm thirsty. Right on, Naruto nodded and hurried to the kitchen. He was immensely happy for the change of topic in conversation, but he knew he wasn't quite off the hook yet. In the morning the three genin gathered in their sensei's room. All of them were happy that the Junin had finally awoken. Especially Sakura looked ecstatic. Sasuke was trying to keep his usual disinterested face, but even he was visibly relieved. I'm so glad you're all right. The kunoichi exclaimed. Now I'm not so scared that the ninja will come back and kill us. Relax, Sakura, Kakashi comforted her. He's dead. I know, but Naruto kept scaring us, telling that he wasn't, the pinkette complained. I checked it, the Junin replied. I assure you he was dead. I assure you he wasn't, Naruto opposed. I checked his pulse, the masked man reminded him. So, that still isn't making absolutely sure, the orange-clad genin protested. Hey, Naruto, Kakashi spoke. I understand that you are scared, but that's not a reason to scare your teammates as well. This isn't scaring anybody, Naruto disagreed. This is doing everything in our power to make sure we don't get killed. Besides, even if he were dead, there's no guarantee there aren't more. From what I heard about this Gato, he can afford it. Well, you're right on that one, their sensei agreed grudgingly. I'd better make sure you're prepared for whoever comes next. After breakfast, we'll head to the woods for special training. Kakashi sighed deeply as he observed his team from behind his orange book. He certainly didn't imagine this when he had introduced them to the tree climbing exercise. On the other end of the clearing, Sakura was sitting on a high tree branch, panting. That in itself wasn't surprising. Her chakra control had always been good, but her reserves were small, so she had to rest often. What was more surprising was that Naruto was able to do it as well. To Kakashi it looked like he had practiced it before. He had marched up the trunk with no problem on his first try, and though his feet sometimes slipped or the bark cracked, overall he was doing well. And then there was Sasuke. It was obvious that the last Uchiha had never tried tree walking before. His efforts weren't bad for a beginner, in fact, they were quite good, but still way behind the others. And if Sasuke couldn't stand something, it was being the last one in anything. It made him angry and anger caused his concentration to slip, hindering his progress, which in turn made him even angrier. It was a vicious circle and it didn't seem like the youth would find his way out anytime soon. Kakashi sighed. He could tell them something, but he doubted it would help. They had to work out their trouble on their own. He turned his eye to the pages of his book. He got to the point when Kensai would meet Ryo unexpectedly after what followed his favorite scene, but today he couldn't enjoy reading the way he usually did. Instead, his thoughts kept turning towards Naruto. There was something off about the boy, and it wasn't only the fact that he was much better than people believed. Such things sometimes happened. What bothered him more was his overall behavior. The boy tended to stare off into space at random times, like he was watching something only he could see. Sometimes he seemed to listen to things only he could hear and react to who knows what. The conversation with Thin Air tonight was just the tip of the iceberg. Take for example his outburst in the mission room that had earned them this mission. What had prompted it? Somehow, Kakashi didn't believe it was Tora the cat. And what about the conversation this morning? Why was he so insistent that Zabuza wasn't dead? And why did it bother him so? He had checked that the Kirinukanen was dead. Then the Hunter Nin had picked up his body and... crap. The Hunter Nin had picked up his body. That wasn't standard procedure. He was supposed to destroy it on spot. But he didn't. With a sinking feeling, Kakashi realized that Naruto had been right. Zabuza wasn't dead. It made the Junin glad that he had started on the training so early. He turned his attention back to the book. There was nothing he could do about it now. He couldn't even walk without his crutches, and besides, if Zabuza had been in a state of false death, it would take him over a week to recover. For now, there was no reason to worry too much. Naruto glanced to where Sasuke was struggling with his exercise. No matter how much fun it was to see the arrogant boy struggle, he could do without his dead clan cheering on him, and the absolutely murderous look Sasuke was giving him. It made him wonder whether it would be a good idea to go to sleep tonight. And then there were the looks Kakashi was giving him. Like he was waiting for him to do something weird. It unnerved him. He couldn't allow another slip-up, not after last night. He was sure Kakashi was going to grill him about it later, so he made an extra effort of ignoring the insults from the Uchiha clan and jokes from Obito. And the deceased Kakashi's teammate was making an extra effort to make him crack. Another fact that bothered him was that they had left Tazuna alone. It was true that with Kakashi unable to fight they would barely slow Zabuza down, but in case only his accomplice showed up, they might be able to make a difference. And there were always the thugs that became so common in the island country ever since Gadu took over. He had made a dozen of clones and sent them after the bridge builder, but in case something happened, they wouldn't be much help. They could only last so long and couldn't take any damage. Then a rush of memories attacked him. One of his clones had just dispersed. His heart raced faster. Was Tazuna under attack? No, it was just an accident. He relaxed only to be awoken from his musings with sharp pain to his back. He picked himself up from the ground. He had completely lost his concentration and fell without even realizing it. Kakashi had been right when he insisted he was still far from mastering the skill. So the Dobi finally fell, Sasuke sneered maliciously. Watch it, Teme, Naruto retorted. You have yet to climb halfway the trunk. The Uchiha's face twisted in anger and his dead entourage started screaming insults at the Jinchuriki. Naruto groaned inwardly. He really had to do something about them, the problem being that he had no idea what. He turned away and slowly walked up the trunk. Tell me how you do it, Sasuke demanded. So now the great Uchiha wants advice from the dead last? Naruto asked mockingly. What had the world come to? Don't mess with me. Tell me, are you sure? After all, I'm just a stupid loser who keeps falling. Why don't you ask Sakura instead? The last Uchiha scowled darkly. It's really easy, Sasuke-kun. Sakura called cheerfully from where she was resting under her tree. It caused the dark-haired genin to scowl even fiercer. You just gather the chakra in your feet and... What do you think I'm doing? Sasuke snapped. Sakura took a step back looking like she'd been hit. Sasuke-kun, she whispered. Her idol didn't answer. He turned around and attempted to climb the tree again, only to have the bark explode under his foot. He grimaced in pain and then tried again, this time more carefully. His foot stuck to the tree and he made next step. 3 steps later his feet slipped and he had to jump down. Just concentrate on what are you doing, Sasuke-kun, Sakura advised him. Sasuke didn't answer, but his performance after this improved a bit. Kakashi sighed as he watched the scene hidden behind his book. So his team's cooperation didn't improve a bit, but at least they didn't try to kill each other. Yet, Minato-sensei, even we weren't possibly that bad, he thought. How did you ever put up with us? And how would you fare with them? They barely tolerate each other. The silver-haired man grimly wondered how long his team was going to last. And how he would fare in the next battle backed up with a band that was as likely to attack each other as the enemy. The prospect looked grim. Better not to think about it too much. He turned his attention back to the book. It was much better to read about the mischief Kensai got himself into. Books were much better company than people, especially since he was approaching the really juicy part. Chapter 13 Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto, through the eyes of death. The dinner was a tense affair. Naruto was staring at his food, occasionally stealing a glance at Kakashi, waiting for the man to bring up yesterday's night's conversation. The masked Junin was reading his book, covertly observing Naruto, waiting for him to do something weird. Sasuke was staring into his bowl angrily, brooding over today's training. Sakura was trying to cheer him up and failing miserably. Tsunami was trying to keep peace at the table. Tazuna was looking grim. Inari was absent. I can't take it anymore, Obito shouted. How can you live in such a tense atmosphere? Hey, Naruto, if you didn't insist on keeping secrets, we could be much happier now. Naruto pretended he didn't hear him. Only Sasuke's dead entourage reminded him that it's unbefitting for an Uchiha to shout, and Naruto winced a bit when one particularly vocal shouted it from right beside his ear. Hypocrites, he thought, but couldn't do anything about it. Finally the dinner was eaten. It didn't take long, since there wasn't much to eat and everybody retired to their rooms. Naruto was relieved until he realized he shared his room with Sasuke. The dark-haired genin was giving him dirty glares, obviously wanting to ask for some tips for tree walking, but too proud to do so. And if one glaring Uchiha wasn't enough, his dead clansmen were doing the same. Naruto decided to go for a walk. Maybe if he was lucky the Uchiha would fall asleep before he came back. Sasuke was tired from the training, so that was quite likely. But luck wasn't on his side today and he ran into Kakashi. Hello, Naruto, the Junin greeted. Hello, Sensei, the genin replied. So are you ready to resume our talk from yesterday? No, there was no way Naruto was ready. There's nothing to talk about, he stated. I'm not nothing, just tell him already so we can quit this awkwardness. Naruto had no intention to heed his advice. I think there is, the masked Junin insisted. Well, I don't think so, the blonde genin snapped back. I told you I'm not nothing, Obito screamed, now clearly irritated. Naruto shot him an angry glance. Kakashi noticed that his student's eyes locked on a seemingly empty spot. He realized it wasn't the first time he saw him doing so. In fact, the blonde did it quite often. He was determined to find out what it could mean. I know you're hiding something, Naruto, he stated. I'm not, the boy protested. It's bad to keep secrets from your teammates, he reminded him. Everybody here keeps secrets. We're ninja after all, the orange-clad genin pointed out. But teammates should trust each other, Kakashi countered. Says the man who refused to give any information on our team's introduction, Naruto deadpanned. You weren't officially confirmed a team back then. Now you are, the silver-haired Junin pointed out. So what am I supposed to do? The orange-clad boy scratched his head. Tell them a certain S-class secret that can get them executed if they accidentally slip it up. I won't endanger them that way. Kakashi had to admit that Naruto got him with this one, but he wasn't about to give up so easily. But this isn't your only secret, he stated. Maybe, maybe not, the Jinchuriki shrugged. But I'm allowed to have secrets, just as you do. So you do have another secret? The one-eyed man prodded. I never said that, Naruto replied. You didn't have to, Kakashi responded. You realize you'll have to tell eventually? I don't think so. The genin stood his ground. Well, I think so. Don't you have some porn to read? Naruto tried to change the topic. I always do, but it can wait for the moment. Kakashi deflected the attack. Then you'll wait for a very long time, the blonde remarked. Is that so? Kakashi's only visible eyebrow disappeared under his hite. You know, Naruto, that teams that can't cooperate well can be dissolved. And what would happen then? I'm not the one who has the biggest trouble with teamwork, the Jinchuriki pointed out. True, the Junin sensei admitted, but whoever is at fault, everybody suffers. Don't I know it, the student remarked sagely. Remember, Naruto, everybody on the team is required to do everything they can to make the team work, Kakashi chastised him. So tell them already, Obito demanded. Once again he was completely ignored. Yes. So don't forget about it, and with that the Junin left. Naruto remained standing in the hallway. Kakashi's words sounded hypocritical to him. He was doing everything he could to make Team 7 work. He wasn't giving his teammates a reason to consider him a freak. What else was he supposed to do? Naruto knew he should go to sleep, but he couldn't. He didn't have the strength to face Sasuke and his dead relatives right now. Instead he left the building and headed into the forest. He wandered around aimlessly for hours, until tiredness began to set. He knew he should return to the house, but he didn't want to face its occupants. Instead he settled down on a soft patch of grass and fell asleep. Naruto's eyes snapped open. Some instinct warned him of approaching danger. He quickly scanned his surroundings for the cause of the alarm. There was nothing that seemed dangerous, only a young girl with a basket of flowers was standing on the opposite side of the clearing and a silent ghost of a similar-looking woman trailing behind her. Then he realized that if the girl really was a civilian, he would have heard her coming from a mile away. Then he took a closer look at her soul and realized he had seen her before. She was Zabuza's accomplice. He took in a quick breath. He cursed himself for not returning to the house. Nothing his teammates and Kakashi-sensei could throw at him was as bad as facing a possibly very powerful enemy without backup. He was racking his brain for something to do, but he came empty. You'll catch a cold sleeping in such place, the enemy Kunoichi spoke in a kind tone. It was completely out of character for somebody he was fighting a couple of days before, but Naruto couldn't find any sign of deception in her voice. But that didn't mean he trusted her. In his book, it equaled only to her being that good. He decided to play along for the time being. Oh, it takes more than that to put me down, he grinned. Really? She asked. You do seem to be cold. It's nothing, he shrugged. I'm used to worse. Like that time my landlord switched off the heating in the middle of winter and